across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Hope you enjoyed a fabulous Easter break. If you got one, very much enjoy you joining us back today on a beautiful sunny day. We've got the spring. Of course, we've got the better weather after the bank holidays finish. Hopefully you're still on the holes and you can actually enjoy it, in which case sit outside of the garden and listen. Imagine doing that. Oh, yeah, we used to call it summertime, people. Anyway, it's great if you can join us listening on DAB Plus Radio on your smart speaker. Maybe you're watching on YouTube or your connected device. Thank you very much either way for joining us today. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. An awful lot coming up in this hour. We're going to be talking about those striking junior doctors. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump's threat to wipe out Iran if it doesn't agree to a ceasefire. We've got another attack on Keir Starmer from Donald Trump, comparing him to Neville Chamberlain. And the boss of the Wireless Festival in London over the summer has defended booking Kanye West and has urged for forgiveness over the rapper's past anti-Semitism. Trouble is, it's not very much in the past, is it? And how come the rules seem to be different for different people over what it is and what is not forgivable and cancelable for life, for your career? God forbid he didn't misgender a Jew. That would have ended his career, right? We'll talk about all of that. So much more to come. I want to hear from you in particular. As you know, you can talk about anything you want. You can call us about any of the stories we're talking about or anything you want to have a go about. That's absolutely fine. But in particular, as the latest 15th doctor's strike began at 7 o'clock this morning, we've seen again and again, actually, that the impact on people has got lesser and less because we're looking at only like 95%, 95% of operations and appointments going ahead and only 5% being cancelled. That said, are there a load of appointments that deliberately aren't made because they know in advance they'd have to cancel them? We don't know. But we are told that these BMA resident doctor strikes, don't call them junior doctors, have now cost the NHS £3 billion since 2023. They've had 15 strikes. It's basically £50 million a day that they cost, quite apart from the disruption to ordinary patients, many of whom might be waiting a year or two for an operation. So I want to know from you, because Wes Streeting's being all Mr. Tough Man now, isn't he? After giving them a 29% pay rise and then being really surprised when the next day they said, we'll strike again, now we want 26%. How would you, if you were the Health Secretary or you were the Prime Minister, how would you deal with the doctors' 26% pay demand? I'd love to know what you would do. Would you give it to them? Would you say, that's it, you're all sacked? Would you be negotiating with them still? I want to know what you would do. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Love to see what my guest who's joining me for the whole day is... no, sorry, we only booked you till 1. You can escape. You can have lunch and everything. I think I'm just having a post-chocolate come down. I'm not going to lie. I think that's what it is. I'm just... My brain's not quite in gear. 4 days off in a row. It's been so exciting. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, joining us. Good morning to you. Have you had a good Easter?
I've had a very good Easter.
Was there a lot of eating of chocolate?
A lot of eating of chocolate, a lot of not doing very much. Exactly how
just
it should
not doing very much.
Yeah.
That's kind of... I think Easter is... If you're not religious, I think Easter is very much a not doing very much, you know, bit Easter egg hunt in the garden. I had an Easter egg hunt. There it was, in the shopping bag.
You just went
so I ate it
round Waitrose, was it?
Yeah, exactly. We'll come to Waitrose. We've just been talking about Waitrose, we're joking. So look, let's talk first of all about the doctor's strike. It's interesting, this figure, it's in lots of the papers, 15 set of strikes in 3 years, £3 billion cost. I'm going to query some of these costs because they're paying extra for NHS consultants who earn a lot more to take over from junior doctors. But I do wonder how legit some of these figures are, because a lot of these people would have been paid anyway. But where do you stand on this?
Well, as you say, it's always a bit of a kind of war of words, a war of figures at a time like this. That's to be expected, but it is a reminder of just how intractable this has been. And of course, if you want to look at this in as fair-minded a way as possible, there has been that real terms pay cut, which has been experienced by the
is it as big as the doctors claim?
Well, this is the thing, you know, you can look at RPI, you can look at CPI, all these arguments we could do to the cows come home. One thing that's clear is I think most people's patience with them has run out, and I don't just mean the Labour Party and the Health Secretary, even people across the public sector, I dare say, are looking at this and thinking, you may be pushing this just a little bit.
Well, there is an element, isn't it? They've got the way biggest pay rise of any public sector workers. They say, well, we've had a hard pay cut more. They've claimed up to a 26% pay drop since 2022 from 2008. They deliberately used this 2008 figure, which is like the high water mark of pay before the economic crash. Oh, did everyone get a pay cut after across the public sector? Oh, by the way, in the private sector as well, when there was an economic crash. Funny that. I mean, you're not unique. Like, you alone, doctors should get that extra money. As you said, they use the RPI measure of inflation instead of the CPI. To the extent that, you know what difference that makes? That's if you went for the 21% pay drop figure, which is one of the figures they often give, it would then become a 4.7% pay cut. Since 2008, depending on which one you use. So come on, that's a bit of a giveaway that they're being a little bit dodgy about this. They always talk about their base pay. They don't include all the extras they get routinely. There are lots of people who just routinely get extra money for extra hours, a bit of weekend working. The pension, they get a comedically big pension. I've got no problem with them being well paid. I think they're starting on 52 grand after they leave medical school now. Brilliant, good, I'm pleased. We want to entice more doctors in. Do you think that Wes Streeting's doing a good job of this? Because, I mean, there was quite a lot of hubris before he came in, which is like, if only the Tories were negotiating properly, then they sort of be fine. They came in, they basically gave them everything they wanted, and then literally the next day the BMA went, we're going to carry on striking, we want more. No,
absolutely. And it's an interesting one for Wes Streeting because, obviously, in terms of his overriding goal, which is to get the health service back on its feet, as he often likes to say, this is not going to help, to put it lightly. At the same time, in the same way that Tory health secretaries would like a bit of a scrap with the unions from time to time, the same is also kind of true of Wes Streeting. It's that kind of sense of demonstrating that he's a sort of sensible centrist and so on. So
that won't go down very well with Labour activists when he's going in the Labour leadership contest. It won't,
but there is an interesting kind of certain level of relish that I think the health secretary takes whenever these fights come up now. So it's a complicated picture in terms of the politics.
Yeah, I mean, more people I think are on his side now, and he does come across as being reasonable. He was willing to give them a big pay rise. I think a lot of people think they are taking the mick now. They really do. They're just taking the mick. The fascinating thing is that the staff who work at the British Medical Association's office, who I think are represented by the GMB union, they're currently on strike, and I think they wanted a sort of an inflation-proof pay rise, and the doctors' union has refused that, and so the staff who work at the BMA's offices are now on strike because the BMA won't give them a pay rise, which is a tiny fraction of what doctors earn. And bearing in mind, a lot of these people will be on much lower incomes. Well, of course they're on lower incomes. They haven't done 7 years of education, they haven't got straight A levels and a degree in medicine. Of course they should be paid less. Sorry, I'm not a socialist. But nevertheless, people on lower incomes are much harder hit by inflation because it is the necessities. It's your energy bill, it's your food bill, it's your fuel in your car. That's the stuff that's gone up the most, and that's the stuff they spend more of their income on. So it is quite outrageous for the BMA to go, well, we being the special people with the stethoscopes, we demand this pay rise, but we won't pay a tiny fraction of that to our own staff. I think that tells you everything about the attitude of those doctors.
Yeah, and if you
socialism for thee, or for me and not for thee.
Well, and the BMA, if you want to look a bit historically, is a bit of form in terms of looking out ruthlessly for its own members' interest, even at the expense of the broader public.
Yeah.
I mean, they opposed the foundation of the NHS on the basis that it was going to hit their bottom line then. So it's one of those things where, is it history repeating itself? But I think the one thing that's clear is if you're going to take industrial action, particularly if you're in not just the public sector but the health service, there will be, shall we say, collateral damage from any action that you decide to take. You really need to take the public with you, and that is something that they could count upon even not that long ago. Now that is really depleted, and I think that's pretty telling about how much they've maybe overplayed their hand here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about someone overplaying his hand. Donald Trump. I can't read out a lot of his messages over the weekend. Very expletive laden. I mean, the F word, the B word, things I'm not allowed to say.
Sunday, of all things. I'm not even a religious man, but even that was quite striking.
I mean, it was quite shocking, wasn't it? They were, talking about, and there's also a huge number of misspellings as well. He's not the greatest speller in the world. Basically, threatened to wipe Iran out in one night. Says it would take 4 hours to destroy all their bridges and their power stations if this deal isn't in place by 8 p.m. tonight, 1 a.m. UK time. Iranians, by all accounts, going, yeah, we're not for dealing. It's not going to happen. And anyway, if you do that, we will retaliate. And let's remember, we've got a whole load of Arab Gulf states and Israel. Israel perhaps less likely because they've got dome, at least to be hit so badly. But nevertheless, you're talking about wiping out the energy stations, facilities which power the desalination plants, which provide the vast majority of water for people in these countries. We are talking about a massively huge humanitarian attack at this point. Do you think that, I mean, what do you think Donald Trump means it? Do you think he'll carry it through? Do you think they've got the capability? Would it be a war crime?
Well, it's difficult to say with Donald Trump because he does seem to be a very keen practicer of the quote-unquote kind of madman theory of geopolitics, which is you constantly want to look like you're spoiling to do the craziest, most destructive, most ruthless thing possible in order to bring people around the negotiating table to get what it is that you want to extract from them. So that we always have to read it slightly in that context. I think even the sections of the American public who are just about still with him on this conflict would take a very dim view, shall we say, of a military campaign that was quite so ruthless in its targeting of civilian infrastructure. And certainly if you want to maintain any vestige of the moral high ground to engage in the kind of tactics that the Iranian regime wouldn't blush from taking and have taken in terms of targeting civilian infrastructure, desalination plants, all the rest of it in the Gulf states so far, it doesn't really help. But as ever, it's so difficult to work out what signal, what is noise, what is bluster to the end of trying to get some kind of outcome, and how much this is really serious where Donald Trump is.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's interesting, actually. John Spencer, who is basically a war expert, war ethics expert, and who's been very clear about, no, there isn't a genocide in Gaza, and he does facts. Sorry, but I know people get upset by facts, but, facts in terms of like how Israel has conducted their war in the Middle East. But he's actually made a point yesterday on social media, yes, despite all the experts, X just being the letter X, as in social media, supposed experts on the law of armed conflict, targeting bridges, power plants, oil and gas facilities, airfields and other dual-use infrastructure like factories, communication nodes and railway lines that serve both civilian and military needs may be lawful. It is completely you have to completely look at what is the military objective, and if your military objective is to take away the power and the ability to wage war on your neighbours, then it would be totally and utterly legitimate to do. Infrastructure is absolutely. We in fast wars have targeted infrastructure, so it depends whether it's primarily a civilian or military, what that can do to disarm the military ability, but also crucially, is the impact on civilians out of proportion with the military achievement? So you've got all these different aspects. But it ain't as simple as the people on X and Facebook seem to think. But my main worry is just these wild threats. We're told there are negotiations, and some of the people he's negotiating with are now off the kill list, so there's actually someone to talk to, but nothing direct because they're understandably fearful. We believe that the current Ayatollah is in a coma somewhere, no use to anybody, probably not a bad thing given he's very hard line, the son of the former Ayatollah Khomeini. But some of his wild language, I support the war aims. I'm absolutely in favour of the war aims, and I think there's a very strong argument for taking Iran out as soon as possible, the Iranian regime. But the way he talks totally undermines the moral and defence base of that war. I've had quite a few people say that, especially some of his messaging, there is a genuine concern that Donald Trump, like his predecessor as president, may be suffering from dementia on some level. That some of his language, some of the random things. Now, there's an element where Donald Trump's always behaved like that, and that's part of his whole shtick, which is no one can predict what I'm going to do, And I get that there may be an element of that, but having had an elderly relative with dementia, they go in and out. they are sometimes they aren't, sometimes they pretend, sometimes it's a very complicated thing. And I'm beginning to think. I mean, he looks pretty compos mentis to me, way more than Joe Biden was, and that was all hidden by the American media for a long time. But I'm beginning to think there may be an element of this creeping in.
It's very hard to tell, as ever. Trying to sort of diagnose from a distance is always tricky.
And probably inappropriate.
And fraught with peril. At the same time, what is clear is that the rhetoric is erratic. I suppose it comes down to whether or not you're in the camp of this is a genius game of 4D chess, or he is just all over the place, making up as he goes along. The truth is probably almost certainly somewhere in the middle. There's an element of gamesmanship. There is an element of trying to keep the regime guessing. But at the same time, I don't think anyone could look at what's going on at the moment and feel like a strategy is being perfectly followed to the letter.
The fact that they didn't secure the Strait of Hormuz is the giveaway. I'm sorry.
And also the back and forth. I mean, going from suggesting that the Strait of Hormuz is really Europe's problem or the rest of the world's problem, and then making it a condition of any kind of ceasefire agreement being reached in the long term. I mean, it's going back from one position to the next.
Yeah, exactly.
And in that, it's hard to work out, what, really, what is the clear strategy.
But it is interesting that he was yet another attack at Keir Starmer, because our government has said that they won't allow US to use our bases to do strikes on any civilian infrastructure, and there's an argument in terms of the retaliation back in the Gulf state that you're in a difficult state. But by the way, that's the giveaway why the regime needs to be changed. That's kind of the giveaway there, the fact they'd be willing to do that. But and
they'll make no distinction anyway.
No, exactly. They really don't. I mean, like Russia doesn't in Ukraine. They are deliberately targeting quite specifically civilian structures, like nurseries and apartment blocks. For goodness' sake. But they're saying we don't want another Neville Chamberlain from Donald Trump to Keir Starmer. Again, I think he's got a fair argument there, but he undermines his own argument. With his mad rhetoric.
I think where Keir Starmer's concerned as well, he has played a sort of weak hand or a bad hand quite badly and quite weakly, I dare say, because across Europe, many leaders are on the same page, which is to say that, of course, they're going to defend their own installations and their allies, but they don't want to be sucked into what they primarily consider to be America and Israel's war. And yet at the same time, Keir Starmer has come out of this as looking uniquely weak, I think, because of the prevarication, because you could take a stance against this conflict that doesn't look quite so weak, but when you go from saying, well, I want to let them use the bases, but Ed Miliband won't let me, to, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure
They've denied all that. They denied all that.
Of course they do. But
talking about a stance, is this weak or not? Kanye West has been booked to appear at the Wireless Festival in North London in the summer. He, of course, I mean, I think an utterly brilliant artist. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And as the festival boss, Melvin Ben, has pointed out, he is, being on Spotify, he's on iTunes still, I think. He's still being played on the radio. I still listen to his music. However, he has, in very recent years, said and done some really awful things. He says he's bipolar, and that's his excuse, but he's put out T-shirts with swastikas on. He's put out images with a swastika over the Star of David. He has sung a song. What was the song actually praising?
Called Heil Hitler.
Heil Hitler, praising Hitler. I mean, he's now apologised. Full page ad in a newspaper doesn't necessarily count as full, mea culpa. But there's been calls for him to be banned from the festival, calls for the government to basically not allow him entry to the country. Bearing in mind, I mean, if someone once smoked dope and has a conviction for that, you're not allowed to enter America. So I mean, let's be realistic about it. There's a precedent for this. In 2015, when Theresa May was Home Secretary, she banned an act. I'm not going to pretend to know who they are. I'm going to do my 80-year-old judge thing. Tyler, the Creator. I've got nothing. Everyone's laughing at me. I've got nothing. Tyler, the Creator, was banned from the UK for 3 to 5 years for album lyrics back from 2009, so from 6 years before then, that encouraged violence, fostered hatred, and were clearly blatantly homophobic. The argument was he was not conducive to the public good, therefore he was not going to be allowed entry to the country. The Prime Minister has said he's concerned. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says she is looking at a ban. Here's the thing. We've had artists losing their whole careers for saying trans women aren't women, for misgendering somebody, for just not playing along with that madness, for saying things like, Lawrence Fox saying, all lives matter, this country isn't racist. That was his terrible sin on Question Time, which absolutely torpedoes his entire very successful acting career. And that's fine with the left. That's fine. You can cancel people for stuff like that, which most of us would consider to be utterly blameless and faultless. This guy has said and done some awful things. He says he's bipolar. Does that mean, it's okay? Should he be allowed? Should he have the legal right, as the festival boss says? Because Melvin Ben has said, that his comments are abhorrent. He's pro-Israel. He says, pro-Jewish community. I'm a deeply committed anti-fascist. I've lived on a kibbutz for many months in the 70s. He's also committed to a Palestinian state, the two-state solution. But he says he's intended to come in and perform. We're not giving him a platform to extol opinion of whatever nature, only to perform the songs that are currently played on the radio stations in our country, in the streaming platforms in our country, and listened to, enjoyed by millions. And he said he called people to reflect and offer some forgiveness and hope to him, as I have decided to do. Is that the right attitude?
Well, I think that's there. When it comes to wireless and when it comes to the sponsors, some of whom are pulling out, some of whom are holding firm, it does come down to their own.
Quite a few
judgment.
big.
This is a murky area. I mean, first, the thing you do have to start with is the obscene double standards, as you suggest. There have been people who have been pulled from the bills of festivals for saying much less. There have been people, like, say, Tyler, the Creator, banned from the country, despite the fact that, without going too much into that case, the idea that he was some kind of fire-breathing homophobe was kind of nonsensical. He was kind of like almost Eminem-style extreme kind of rapper, but it was very much tongue-in-cheek. That's where Kanye West is concerned. He was going around openly praising Adolf Hitler. He was going around making songs to that effect. He was going around at one point wearing a black Ku Klux Klan outfit. I mean, all of this is of a scale and a nature that would surely be cancelable if your target was any group other than the Jews.
This is the thing. If he was a white guy and he was saying this about black people or about gay people, there's no way in the world he'd be allowed in this country. The left would be up in arms demanding he wasn't allowed in the country.
There is absolutely no question about that. I suppose the other side of the ledger here is, on the one hand, he's clearly very ill. Has clearly been in the grips of some kind of extreme episode. Whether that explains away the blatant anti-Semitism, I don't think.
Well, then, he should be allowed to do a live performance, and that's the argument. It's like, you're not inviting him to come and give his political message on stage, but he's going to be on stage live over 3 nights.
Yeah, and what if he does? I mean,
what if he does?
And obviously, he's been on this kind of apology tour. He took out that full page ad in the American press, making the points that you've already kind of aired, which is that he was in the grips of a sort of manic episode and that this does not reflect his views. He's offered to meet with the British Jewish community. People can make up their own minds about how sincere that is, but I think it is difficult a precedent to set whereby essentially any kind of artist, musical artist, what have you, political views become the reason.
Well, but that precedent has already been set. But they're not his political views. It's about spouting hate.
No, well, hatred is, where does one end and the other begin? This is not to say.
I know. I'm not exactly. I don't like the idea of hate crime, but swastikas, Ku Klux Klan, celebrating Hitler, a man who killed, in the millions deliberately on an industrial scale, and also a festival in North London where the largest population of Jews in this country live. I'm not Jewish, but I'm just like, I'm in too much. I don't want people banned, and it's interesting. The left, you want it both ways. If you like somebody, then they're not banned for life for nothing, and it's just that he has done something. I'm thinking if he genuinely regretted what he said and he genuinely feels like, I'm thinking you shouldn't be touring. You should be kind of sorting yourself out, sort your head out, getting whatever treatment you can have, getting your medication up to scratch, and you should probably be, I don't know, spending some time, maybe spend 6 months. I suppose just putting an advert out, making a statement, 6 months making good for what you've done, if you genuinely regret what you've done.
And also there is a difference when it comes to people coming to the country from abroad. I mean, if you're in this country, although we don't properly have full free speech in this country, you should expect those rights. People have the freedom to say what they like. They have the freedom of association. If people want to host them, that's up to them. That's the sort of principle we hold to. It's a little bit different when you've got someone coming from overseas. All that being said, I think it is a tricky area, not least because of the fact that whilst he's now claiming to disavow all of these views that he previously held, a lot of this sort of gutter anti-Semitism is also kind of fueled by a sense of conspiracism. That was certainly true of Kanye West. And you do worry the extent to which another ban will kind of fuel the idea as like, oh, they made sure it didn't go ahead, didn't they? So there's all these kinds of different judgments that people have to make, and it's been interesting to see Wireless so firmly stick by this. You can't help but feel it's a combination of the bottom line as well as the fact that, like it or lump it, he is the sort of most significant pop cultural figure of his generation, if not the 21st century. And that makes it really, really hard to judge in a way that some of these others might.
Well, with Kanye West himself has he's issued a statement saying, I've been following the conversation around wireless and I want to address it directly. My only goal is to come to London and present a show of change, bringing unity, peace and love through music. I'd be grateful for the opportunity to meet with members of the Jewish community in the UK in person to listen. I know words aren't enough. I have to show change through my actions. If you're open, I'm here. The Board of Deputies of British Jews have responded saying we are willing to meet Kanye West as part of his journey of healing, but only after he agrees not to play the Wireless Festival this year. Yeah, play next year after you've done that. I'm love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Is this censorship? But we're both free speeches. You're more of an absolutist than me, but there's also he's not conducive to the public good based on his past statements, very recent past statements. You could argue. Want to know, would you ban him? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Want to know from you about the doctor's strike. How would you deal with the doctor's 26% pay demand, given the £3 billion cost of the last 3 years of strikes that we've seen? 15 strikes started at 7 o'clock this morning. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:30 is the time. Let's get to some of your messages about the strikes by BMA resident, not junior doctors, costing the NHS £3 billion since 2023. How would you deal with the doctors? Still, another one after 29%, now another 26% pay demand. Brian says, give them a pay cut till you get back the money the strikes cost. Oh, do you know what? That is an element where genuinely every single day you just say, right, now we're offering you whatever percentage, we're now offering you less. And every day that they go on strike, the amount that the government's willing to offer should go down. That would focus minds, wouldn't it? Adam says, I'd rethink the whole NHS. Good point. Continuous strikes are a major issue with nationalised healthcare. Florence says, I'd ban strikes, offer them no more money. Ruth says, sack them. They care about money, not patients, nor the Hippocratic Oath. Carol says, I'd audit and restructure the NHS. The NHS is no longer fit for purpose. Billions are put into it every year with no change in outcomes. This is true. Richard said they need to emphasise frontline workers and scrap lots of the admin staff. That would lead to more workplace satisfaction and better patient outcomes. Well, that's the truth. Andrew's on the line in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what do you want to say, my love?
Good morning. I hope you had a great Easter.
Lovely. And you?
Yeah, so if you take Harold Shipman, what he did was he had the Hippocratic Oath, and then he made the conscious decision that he wanted money over the patient's welfare. And this is what you have to link it to.
That escalated quite quickly from people going on strike to one of the biggest mass murderers this country's ever known.
No, but it's the mentality, Julia.
Okay.
He put the money ahead of the lives of the patients. And that's what these doctors have done. They're taking the money ahead of the lives of the patients. Think about it.
Because patients' health, patients' lives are going to be lost as a result of not getting treated in time.
Yeah, and they've made the conscious decision to do that, to use the patients and their welfare and their hopes and aspirations for treatment as a bargaining chip.
But they're still entitled. They're still entitled to a good wage. You could argue. I mean, come on. They're still talented professionals who work very hard to get where they are. They're entitled to a good wage.
So this isn't about wage, it's about control. So I don't disagree with you on that point. Think about it logically. The car industry failed in this country because of this behaviour, the mine industry. This is the end of the NHS. And tell them, you've done it. We cannot have the employees, the tail wagging the dog.
This is true. I mean, yeah, I do agree with you. They are contributing to the end of it. They're not part of the sort of... Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a level of goodwill, hasn't there? I imagine they feel they've used up their goodwill, but certainly their pay demands are just out of scale with anyone else, certainly in the public sector and indeed the private sector. Andrew, thank you for that. Interesting comparison. Jason's in Wiltshire. Hello, Jason. What do you want to say?
Morning, Julia. Nice
Morning.
Easter, loads of Easter eggs.
Yeah, I was very good. I only had we had the one which we ate when we just bought them, but I only had the one, and I waited until Monday.
Oh, crikey, you held off, did you?
I know. I don't know what I was thinking.
I gave my wife one Sunday and she gobbled it up in about 15 minutes, so...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it lasted long once it was open. Anyway, my darling, what do you want to say about these doctors?
Well, I'm going to call them junior doctors because they act like a bunch of kids. So basically, they're not resident doctors, they're junior doctors. I actually think now it's getting to the stage it needs to be wrote into contracts with these, like they do with the police, etc. Yeah. You're not allowed to strike. I do not understand. They are foundation entry level doctors, so they have no specialist training. They are
that's untrue. You can be a resident doctor for 20 years and be fully trained.
Well, yeah, but there's foundation entry-level doctors. They're not trained specially in heart surgery. They're not trained in this. They're not trained in that. You're
quite wrong. When they start, but you can spend between 8 and 20 years as a resident doctor. Everyone other than a consultant is a resident doctor, so they're not junior. These are high. It's very likely if you go in for an operation, it will be a resident doctor operating in you rather than the consultant.
Okay, right. If that's
I'm just saying, that's why they changed the name, because the junior thing isn't accurate.
But I would actually still like to call them juniors because they are acting like kids.
Yeah.
But I do not understand why we've got things like how hard nurses work and clerical staff, paramedics. Why do these junior doctors seem to want to expect they're going to get another 26% pay rise on top of what they've had last year? I spoke to you last year about this, and I said to you, same time next year, chaps, for the next walkout, and they've been and done it again. This will just go on and on and on, Julia. And then they will moan, oh, we're still overworked, we're still this, we're still that, but the NHS then has ploughed a load of money again, or the government into pay rises, cannot afford other stuff, so they're at the same state again. So we'll have next year, oh, we're overworked.
It's never going to end. Yeah, I agree with you. And they look, when they got that pay deal from Wes Treating within days of him becoming health secretary, they said within 24 hours they were going to strike again. Jason, thank you for that. Right now we're giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000 completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. You can spend it, save it or splash it. It's entirely up to you. That buys a lot of Easter eggs. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Very good luck with that. 10:36 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking to former Defence and Foreign Minister Tobias Ellwood about the threats from Donald Trump to Iran. Are they a war crime? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back to the show. 10:39 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest. He's Tobias Ellwood, former Conservative Conservative MP, former Defence and Foreign Minister as well. Good morning to you, Tobias.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of, well, I suppose, where we are, as much as we know where we are in the Iran conflict, in terms of the threats we've had from Donald Trump over the weekend, frankly, some of the language, the expletive-ridden posts on his Truth Social site, the threats of basically bombing them back to the Stone Age, bridges, energy plants and the like, threats of retaliation from Iran. Do you think any of this is going to happen? And what does it mean in terms of Britain's future as well?
Yeah, a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
I could summarize it by simply saying, yes, it's going to escalate. We're now in week 5 of this war. Still unclear what Donald Trump's actual objectives are. What does victory look like? And listening to him and the way you described that there, he does seem to be commentating on a very different war to the one the rest of us see playing out. The regime clearly is damaged. Its military is on the back foot. But Iran's ability to sow chaos across the region and indeed dominate the Straits of Hormuz has not stopped. So I can't say, or nobody can say that America is winning this war. You've got ground forces likely to participate in something as well, 50,000 Marines, and no end in sight. And now we have this ultimatum that Donald Trump has pursued. He's boxed himself in, really. I fear that he will have to now act on his promises to attack critical national infrastructure, the consequences of which will be huge, will be immense, because Iran will then respond as it does, causing further geopolitical and economic escalation, which will ripple to Britain's shores, as well as indeed to America's as well. This regime has been preparing for this eventuality for decades. It's decentralized its decision-making across the 31 provinces in Iran. Every individual commander has got a stash of Shahad 136s able to fire at will at whatever targets they like. And because they can do that, even the superior military might of a power like America is not able to control what's going on.
And that's the big concern, isn't it? And it's interesting, one of the messages from Donald Trump, you crazy B words, do a deal. Well, yeah, they are crazy. They're ideological fascist Islamist lunatics. That's kind of why they're a threat. But that's what you've got to know what you're dealing with. He claims there are talks ongoing. There are some people who've been taken off the kill list because otherwise there's no one left to talk to. But we don't know what's really happening behind the scenes. I imagine both the White House and the Iranian leadership are lying about these things as well. But this is the thing. A lot of people are saying these would, undoubtedly it would be a war crime, or if they're, you go for bridge, you go for energy plants. But my understanding, actually, that's not necessarily the case. It depends what the purpose of those attacks are. If it's to basically take down Iran's ability to fight that war and send missiles to Israel and the Arab Gulf states, then actually it wouldn't necessarily be a war crime. Bridges obviously crucial in wars as well. But nevertheless, the impact of that on the Iranian people, losing energy, perhaps losing water from the desalination plants not able to function, attacks in retaliation by Iran on the Gulf states. They've been very clearly hinting at taking out their energy plants, their desalination plants. That would be, catastrophic is not too big a word, is it?
You sum it up very well indeed, and you've actually given it a surprise, if I may say this, a very balanced view on that, because you made it very clear. It will breach international laws. There's no doubt about it. This is going against the International Criminal Court. Does America care? No, it doesn't, because it doesn't even sign up to that. But when you start hitting desalination plants, as you implied, the oil terminals and so forth, that will have a knock-on consequence, not just to the oil price around the world, for many, many years, because the Gulf will need to rebuild all their capabilities and so forth. And indeed, it's the Iranian people, And wars are judged not by what you destroy on the day, but the politics that you leave behind. And this goes to the heart of where Donald Trump's philosophy here is so flawed, because he wants to get rid of the nuclear capability. Understood. Big tick in the box there. Wants to get rid of the long-range missiles, wants to get rid of the support of the proxy terrorist groups across the Middle East. What he's not done is to say you should not have, in the 21st century, an Ayatollah, a theocratic leader with their own private army in charge of a country in the Middle East. That should have been the primary objective here, to say unless you get rid of that, the next generation will want to pursue a nuclear weapon, and we're back to square one. So you've got this massive military capability, you know, the world superpower leaning on one single country, but without a plan. It's almost a waste of an opportunity, however uncomfortable it is that we've ended up here, to say this could be a new chapter for Iran. Instead, I fear Donald Trump's bandwidth will be tested. He will simply walk away from this and say, right, I've now bombed them back to the Stone Age. They're not going to be able to rebuild for many, many years, but I'm out of here. And it's for the rest of you to pick up the mess.
Yeah, indeed. Apologies for we heard what you had to say, but the audio feed was a bit crumpled then. But this is the thing: he can walk away rather more easily than Europe and indeed many other countries, much poorer countries, who rely on oil coming out from the Middle East. And again, if there's a difference between not being able to get much oil or gas out of the Straits of Hormuz for a few weeks and energy and not being able to get them out for months, but also energy facilities and actual production being damaged, and we're looking at months or years. That is in terms of the hit on the global economy, is going to be huge if that went ahead. Are there more perhaps restraining voices within the White House who are saying to the president, you mustn't do this, Mr. President? Or, as we saw last week, didn't we, some very senior military figures being given the sack by Pete Hegseth, his Secretary of War. Were they just Biden appointees and weren't on board, or were they people who were saying, you can't do this?
No, I would defend any senior military personnel, Britain or in America and so on. They tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. But Donald Trump now only wants people around him that will agree with him. Dare to stand up with him, and you're shown the door. And the fact that there isn't anybody within the team that could dare to say to Donald Trump, I see you're about to put out that tweet, please do not. Please do not do that. It shows that he's actually very isolated. I suggest even very lonely indeed, because he now sees this bigger picture. He's boxed himself in. He's got little choice now, I'm afraid, than to actually go ahead with some form of infrastructure attack, because he knows that Iran has actually pushed back and he'd be left completely embarrassed. And you touched on such an important point, because it will economically affect right across the globe. If China doesn't get their oil, then they make 1/3 of the world's stuff. If that can't be exported, then that will affect economies across the world as well. So there'll be a massive global recession, all because of Trump's war. I go back to the point. I want to see absolutely this regime move forward, a different regime, a different leadership, and the people of Iran freed. But this is not the way to go about it. This is a textbook example of how not to conduct a war.
Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you, Tobias Ellwood there, former Defence and Foreign Office Minister and former Conservative MP. Tom Slater, I mean, this is the thing, all big risk. I have to say, I think the risk of a nuclear war set off by Iran, also a big risk. I mean, it's not well, everything was fine and we had gambling lambs in the fields and it was all fine, and then out of the blue, America and Israel started this war. It wasn't an out of the blue thing.
Yeah.
But
no, exactly. One thing I think is interesting, particularly about Tobias Ellwood's comments there, and you see this actually across a lot of people on the more kind of pro-intervention American right as well, is that even people who've been pretty up for some kind of confrontation with Iran are nervous about what's going on at the moment. I mean, you could chalk that up to Trump derangement syndrome if you'd like to, but I think there's clearly a sense that even those who share the broader aims, the broader objectives here, and I think you're right, the idea of these Islamist lunatics having a nuclear weapon, any sane person should want to stop that from happening, certainly, I've gotten very nervous about the where this has gone so far.
Absolutely.
And that's something you see on both sides of the Atlantic.
Absolutely. Well, it's 10:48. We've got some news, got some breaking news about interest rates on some of those student loans, those Plan 2 and Plan 3 loans. I'll talk to my next guest about that up next, and we're going to be talking about the costs of all these benefit rises and pensions, triple locks and all of that with David Buick. That's up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. David Buick joins us now. He's a financial advisor and markets commentator at Aquis Exchange. Very good morning to you, sir.
Princess, good morning to you.
I mean, can we say Empress? Did you just demote me to Princess?
No, sorry, Empress. I beg your pardon.
I mean,
sorry,
seriously,
Julia.
David. I mean, there's going to be, I
understand.
I'm going to have you cancelled for that.
Insulted.
You won't be allowed to play a festival for years. Now, I want to ask you about, lots to talk about economically, but I want to ask you about news that's just come in. The government has just announced a plan to cap some student loans, in particular these Plan 2 student loans. Basically, if you went to uni between 2012 and 2023, you're on this terrible Plan 2. There's also Plan 3, which affects postgrad and doctoral courses as well. But it's mostly Plan 2. And basically, people have been paying sky-high fees for this. And basically, you can pay off for years and years and years, and you haven't even touched the actual loan. You're just paying off the interest. But they're going to basically cap interest rates from September at 6%. But it's basically currently it's on the RPI measure inflation plus as much as 3%. But they're going to basically cap it at 6%. Now, a cap is a good thing, but A, they're using RPI instead of the Consumer Price Index, which everyone else used, so they're basically putting it higher. I don't know why it needs to be 3% point higher than that as well. Is the 6% cap, is that going to make a real dent into the amount young people are having to pay back on a student loan?
Not really, in my opinion. It's an iniquitous situation anyway. It's, in fact, discourages people, I think, to go to university because they rack up debts, somewhere around £30,000, maybe even a little bit more.
Or 50 grand, quite normal.
Exactly. But I mean, if you go back 25 years, most people or university undergraduates worked in the holidays and they got holiday jobs. And now they're finding it incredibly difficult to do, or they don't want to. And
well, if they don't want to, sod them. But I know, I've got my daughter's at uni right now, how hard it is, and that girl's got a work ethic, how hard it is to get that work. It's just not out there, that hospitality work that you could just...
Exactly.
I used to leave uni on a Saturday, and on Monday morning I'd start my waitressing job every single holiday.
I mean, my daughters, they did to civil service for Admiral Crichton. They went to Wimbledon. They got all kinds of things, and all those with no debt when they left university. Not capable now, which is incredibly sad. And I think people should discourage people to take out these absolutely heinous loans, which cost a fortune. And when you go to work, it's almost discouraging because you have to pay a large proportion of your salary in order to stand still, which is nonsense.
Absolutely. I just think a lot of people shouldn't be going to university. They're just getting into debt for nothing. Let's talk about, well, whether, people are actually going to get a job and pay some taxes after they've gone to university or not. Because we've got this ridiculous situation where April the 6th, new tax year started yesterday. Huge extra sums of money going to many people on benefits. Of course, you have the increase in the state pension as well. A big debate on the show here yesterday when Alex was hosting with Benedict Spence. But you've got huge sums of money going out, extra $3,500 for each extra child that people who often, I think it's 180,000 couples not working, neither one of them working, and claiming extra money for kids that they chosen to have, which they can't afford to have, and asking everyone else to pay. Everyone else's taxes going up. It is not feeling good for a lot of people, particularly people who are on lowish incomes, who are just struggling to make ends meet.
And giving it their best shot as well, which we mustn't forget as well. I mean, you've only got to look at the cost of everything at the moment. I mean, the welfare state costs £333 billion, due to go up to 400 billion in 2 years' time. And also, we've just seen that the tax receipts were just a couple of billion less, 331 billion. That's just the ordinary direct taxation. Now, except that part of that 333 billion, or a large proportion of it, is in point of fact the state pension. Now, the state pension, again, has just gone up by 4.8%, which is a significant amount. We are living beyond our means. I can't see this government ever understanding that you've got to cut public expenditure if you want to balance the books and if you ever want to see growth.
Okay, we've got Reform and the Tories saying they would cut expenditure on the number, or certainly the number of people who are claiming disability and other benefits, PIPs and the like. And I mean, you can slash that by 2 million, and I'm sure those people will be just fine. But in terms of pensions, very difficult. Pensioners vote, for a start. That grey vote is absolutely huge. They feel very hard done by. I've worked all my life. I've paid in. This is what I've been promised. The triple lock, I mean, Labour are committed to it at the moment. Tories are. Even Reform said they're committed to it. A lot of their voters are older voters. Very difficult to walk away from. But I know, as Benedict Spence was in the studio yesterday, he was talking about it, it's unaffordable and it's unfair on younger people who are not going to have any of those benefits.
Well, the interesting thing is, okay, it's either inflation, 2.5%, or wage. What happens if inflation is somewhere now at 8% as a result of this war in a year's time? So we're going to hack up with 8% on what we're already doing? It's got to be reviewed on merit, in my humble opinion. I mean, I was looking actually, Julia, at the cost of the National Health Service. The National Health Service currently costs us £242 billion each year. It's up from 185 billion only 10 years ago in 2015. Well, 11 years ago.
By the way, more than an extra 350 million pounds a week.
Well, I know,
as was promised on a big red bus.
Exactly. Now, this is, I mean, this loss of the £3 billion per annum because of these doctors. I mean, the trouble is that the whole system is wrecked. It's badly managed, it's badly run. We're throwing money after money, year after year, Tory or Labour. And what is insane is why we can't make the national health, how can I put it, apolitical. There have been 2 papers written in the last 10 years, one by Lord Stuart Rose and the other by General Messenger, suggesting it's got to be a question of business and the central government. And until somebody actually runs it, I mean, people forget the National Health employs the 3rd largest number of people in the world, behind the Chinese army and the Indian railway system. Now, does that not tell you something? That is insanely bad.
But also, crucially, the amount of people who defend it, saying, oh, you know, they want to sell off the NHS, it will be just like America. No one would copy the American system, including the Americans if they were started from scratch.
Not a chance, I agree with you.
No other country has copied our system, and there's a reason why, because it's not a very good system, and other countries spending similar amounts of money are getting much better outcomes. As I've always said, the NHS is great unless you actually want to be treated and live longer. When then it does fall down. So many good points there, lots of big spending, and it's all going to carry on, including by the students on their loan repayments. David Buick, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'll get Tom Slater's thoughts on this. Don't know if he's been covered by that student loan outcome. I mean, so many people we know, and young people in the office, and a lot of you, like your children, will be covered by that. But again, we're still talking about basically a Ponzi scheme that is making money out of the hope of a lot of young people, and the thought that they're going to go and get a degree from a second-rate university a lot of the time, which isn't actually going to be worth the paper they're printed on. There aren't going to be jobs for them in a few years' time. Remember that small matter of AI? We're going to talk about all of that, plenty more coming up. Doctor strikes, Kanye West, Trump and Iran, all of that. I want to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and Easter is over. Maybe not your Easter holidays. Put the chocolate egg down. You should be back at work right now, because I am, so everyone else should be. Or you might be enjoying the sunshine. Kids still off school, enjoying a bit of time with them. Lovely. Have a nice time. Maybe you want to take a little bit of an escape. Spend a bit of time with the show. If you miss anything of the show, though, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. But whether you are listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing the striking junior doctors, so resident doctors. Apparently, they've cost the NHS £3 billion over the last 3 years. This is medics returned to the picket line at 7 o'clock this morning for the 15th strike in those 3 years. We're Also going to be talking about the Boss of Wireless Festival in North London in July, defending booking Kanye West as his headline act. He's urged for forgiveness over the rapper's anti-Semitism. We'll talk more about Iran. We'll also talk about that interest rate cap for some student loans, the worst offenders, those Plan 2 loans that a lot of students are on. Plus, also some breaking news for you. 3 people have been killed, 1 person wounded after a shooting incident near the Israeli consulate in Istanbul. It's being reported by Turkish media. We'll bring you more on that if and when we get it. Lots more to talk about with you. Editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, is with us for all the chat. A very good morning once again to you. Also going to be talking about Artemis 2, the trip to the other side, the far side of the moon, and they're on their way back again now as well. If people want to get in touch, I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. In particular, I'd want to hear from you about the BMA resident doctors strike. It's the 15th one, as I say, in 3 years. Over those 3 years, it's cost the NHS £3 billion, we are told, £50 million a day each time they go on strike. This is another 6-day strike. A number of doctors apparently have been gloating about this is great, 4-day long weekend, and 6-day strike, sorted for childcare for the Easter holidays, so working out very well for them. Not so well if you're waiting for an operation or need treatment. So I want to know from you, how would you deal with the doctors' latest pay demand? It's a 26% pay demand on top of the 29% pay demand they previously had. How would you deal with that? What would you do if you were Wes Streeting? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls to charge at a national rate. Text cost 1. Standard network rate message. Love to hear your thoughts on Kanye West and that festival, music festival he's playing at. Should he be banned from even entering the country? Is that cancel culture? Is that attack on free speech? Or should someone who's basically talked such hate as he has done, should he be allowed in the country? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And what do you make of Trump's latest threats to Iran? Any of those topics, any and all of everything else we're talking about, get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Tom Slater doesn't have to do that. He's in the studio. Tom, let's start first of all with the doctors' strike. We talked a lot about it in the last hour, so I'll perhaps keep this a bit briefer. But doctors have been on strike many, many times. The Labour Party said, when we get in, we're going to sort this out. Wes Streeting almost immediately. Here you go, 29%, or sorry, 28.9, but 29% pay rise. Literally the next day, the BMA union said, we're going to start negotiating to get full pay restoration back to where we were at the high point of 2008, despite the fact, by the way, that they use the RPI, not the CPI, which makes, it basically quadruples the amount of the pay rise they think they've missed out on. But also, most junior doctors weren't working in the NHS in 2018, so in 2008. So what the hell they were paid then is rather irrelevant to the job they applied for since, after the austerity years. And, why did people's pay go down in the austerity years? Because we'd had an economic crash and everyone's sodding pay went down, whether you were a doctor or a nurse, street cleaner, apart from the bankers, they always do fine, don't they? But everyone in the public and private sector basically took a pay cut. Simple as that, for quite a few years because of those years. And it would have happened whoever had been in charge of the government. What would you do if you were Wes Streeting today in terms of how dealing with these strikes?
Well, it's an incredibly difficult position, which is partly of his own making. Obviously, when the Labour Party came in, they acquiesced pretty quickly to the pay demands, not just from the resident doctors, but across the piece. And I think whilst they could count on the goodwill with certain sections of the health service and certain unions representing nurses or others, that certainly was never going to be the case with the BMA. Become much, I think it's fair to say, much more political over the course of the past few years, and much less willing to compromise. He's in a very difficult situation. Obviously, his overriding goal is to make sure that the waiting lists continue to come down, that the health service doesn't remain quite as decrepit as it is currently, and that's incredibly difficult to do when large parts of your resident doctor workforce are walking out routinely. But yeah, what room has he got to play hardball at this point without just having to rely on more and more exorbitant consultant fees in order to fill the gaps? It's a really difficult situation, but I think, as anyone would say, you wouldn't start from here is the main problem, but unfortunately he has to.
No, but that's the thing. I mean, you know, he does have to. The thing is that we've had some calls, people saying you need to ban the strikes, you need to basically say, like, you know, you're just not having this disability. I certainly think there's a very strong argument that if you are a key worker in the public sector, you don't get the right to strike. They say that police, the soldiers and others don't. But then there needs to be a sort of there needs to be a totally independent pay review body. But we've seen governments ignore what's been suggested before anyway. But the point is, pay review bodies need to operate within, you know, that you can say, oh, they deserve a 100% pay rise. Great, but we haven't got the money, so now what? And the only reason doctors were able to get such a big pay rise in 24 was because, and it was over a couple of years. So when, you know, let's be honest, you know, they hadn't had a pay rise over that period, but it was partly because there are fewer doctors than there are nurses. You know, if you give nurses the same pay rise, it's going to cost you many billions more than the, you know, 100,000 plus resident doctors. But nevertheless, they're rather crucial.
No, they are.
We need them.
And that's worth remembering, is that whilst we can be sceptical and question the way in which the BMA have gone about these negotiations, these strikes, this long-running dispute, there is clearly a problem here, which is that the whole kind of structure of the health service, the extent to which doctors are well remunerated, the extent to which there are issues around burnout. They do have a point when they say that many people are leaving the UK soon, quite quickly, for essentially a better deal in Australia or similar. Although, again, that kind of raises questions about if this country has paid for your training and provided it for you, should you then apply your services elsewhere?
I think certainly 10, you should have to work 10 years in the NHS, or you have to pay your loans back.
I think that's probably fair.
I think that's reasonable.
But they do. But there is, as ever, even if they're going about it in the wrong way, there is clearly a point there. There has been this erosion of pay over a long time, even if it didn't affect the individuals concerned over the time period. And also, it's just the fact that the health service is dysfunctional, both in terms of the way in which people were remunerated, as well as just its outcomes. And it's a toxic mixture that we've now.
Indeed. And again, and they've got a load of debt because they do 7 years of uni. Although part of this deal is, you know, the government pays back for any required exams, costs often will be thousands of pounds. They get that paid back. But there was also this battle last week, and I thought it's an absurd thing for Keir Starmer to do, which was like, well, we're gonna withhold 1,000 of those 4,000 training places. No. Like, no, we want those training places. It's insane. We need to be training more of our own doctors. The only reason, we have to rely on immigration to staff the NHS. Well, we wouldn't if we trained enough of our own people. And we've got probably like 3,000. I think it's in the region of about 3,000 young people who've got sort of the maths and the science at A-levels at the top grades to get into medical school who don't get in. Because, you know, we'd rather import people from abroad. I'm sorry, I think that's obscene, and it's absolutely absurd.
Absolutely.
Absolute madness. Talking of people being students, we heard in the last half an hour or so, the government has announced they're going to introduce a cap on interest rates for some student loans, in particular those Plan B loans from 2012. If you went to uni between 2012 and 2023, basically you're on the worst plan. There's also Plan 3, which is some postgrads, but in terms of, you know, probably millions of students, you're looking at paying comedy interest rates based on basically you have to pay 3% on top of the retail price index, a measure of inflation, which is, by the way, a higher rate of inflation measure than the consumer price index, which is used for everything else. So it's dodgy as hell, frankly. It's as dodgy as what the doctors use as well. But they're going to cap it at 6%. Now, here's the thing, from September, in recent years, they've been paying between 6.2% and 8% on those loans, which is obviously way too high. I mean, these people are literally, they're in their 20s, they're on low incomes, they're below average wages, as you would expect to be at that age, and then they're paying huge sums of money out of their bank accounts to pay back these loans, but their loans are getting bigger because they're only paying part of the interest and not even able to pay the loans off. But a 6% cap ain't gonna. That's not gonna do it. I mean, I'm thinking, why can't it just be inflation?
Yeah.
Why can't it just be inflation? I don't understand why they need to make money from it.
No, definitely. It's just a sort of gesture, really. I mean, they can tell that this is a big issue for them, and also electorally, with a lot of young people moving towards the Greens from the Labour Party, they're going to want to try and see that they can at least point to something that they have done. But it doesn't solve the underlying problem. And of course, the Labour Party's fingerprints are all over this crisis, all over this absurd situation.
I don't think we should charge people to go to uni anyway, personally.
It was the combination of, hiking the fees. Obviously, the fee hike we're talking about came in under the coalition, but still, that was in train, wasn't it? Very much during the Labour years. And also the push to get 50% of school leavers to go to university. You put those two things together, you're going to end up with something that is economically makes no sense, certainly not for the students, but also just for the system in general. Many people never being able to pay off the loans in which they've taken out.
But also getting 3 years of debt, living costs, and 3 years of not earning for a degree that's not often worth the paper it's printed on, that in no way qualifies you to do anything.
No, exactly. Because just to be frank about it, the quote graduate premium, to the extent it exists anymore, is from people who are going to more top-tier universities. You try and get 50%...
And doing certain subjects.
Exactly. You try and get 50% of school leavers to go to universities. They're going to go to the old polytechnics. They're going to go to places which, to be perfectly frank, even if they wanted to get into certain white-collar sectors, they'd probably be better off not going to university, getting the work experience early on, and then being 3 years up the ladder by the time...
Not in debt.
And not in debt
I think people have been sold a horrible lie. My daughter's gone to university, but she said she's really academic. It's, and what the jobs she's looking at, you need to have a university degree. But otherwise, I've got one goddaughter who went to uni, who's doing really well, and one who didn't go to uni, who's doing really well. I'm not a... People always go, people who say people don't want everyone to go to university always want their own kids to go to university, but it depends. But I've had a child who wasn't academic, but was someone who could probably get a better job working with their hands, doing something technical. Then I would absolutely have discouraged it. I think it's completely dependent on what you're looking to do in the future. And the whole get a degree, you'll all learn more. There's no evidence for that anymore for most of the degrees these young people are doing, and they're in massive debt. I just think it's an absolute disaster, and I'm appalled that Tony Blair brought that in, and he should always forget the Iraq War. He should hang his head in shame for that one. Now, there's so much more I want to talk about. Talking of which, people you probably don't need to get a degree for. A Waitrose worker, Walker Smith, an employee of 17 years at Waitrose branch in Clapham, South London. Oh, Clapham gets in the news a lot these days, doesn't it? He was sacked for confronting an Easter egg shoplifter. So hardly... You know, you hear about shoplifters, they're just mums trying to get nappies for their kids because they're poverty-stricken. Rubbish. An Easter egg shoplifter's got to sell them to other people. He was fired after he grabbed the bag from the shoplifter. I think he had a whole bag full of £13 eggs, so the fancy schmancy lint eggs. He ransacked a display, he had them all in the bag, and he basically grabbed the bag. He confronted the shoplifter, and they had a bit of a tussle. It broke, the eggs tumbled out. The thing is, he did then apparently, throw an egg in frustration or throw something in frustration, which didn't hit anyone. But basically, he went against the rules in Waitrose, which is, and it's from lots of stores, you are not allowed to tackle the shoplifters. Wonder why the shoplifters think they can get away with it, because they know the staff aren't allowed to tackle them. He got sacked, basically, for putting himself and other people at risk by tackling the shoplifter. Wonderfully, Richard Walker, who runs Iceland, he says, you're welcome to a job with us. We even share the same name. But he's basically said, you should have a job with us. We want to hire you. I couldn't agree more. It's like the bus driver who got sacked. I know the Tories and others have been saying this guy should be sacked, but the bus driver got sacked for basically a woman had her bag stolen. He stopped the bus. Okay, he's not allowed to do that, and he at a bus stop, but he runs off to get the bag back. Now, I think we need to have more of these people.
Yeah. No,
they should absolutely not be sacked.
No, absolutely. I mean, of course, we would
be lauded.
We'd prefer it if the police were able to do their jobs. If shoplifting hadn't been decriminalised.
Sorry, are you on drugs of some sort, Tom? Have you been drinking?
It's a very utopian demand that maybe if people are routinely stealing, that there might be some consequences where the criminal justice system is concerned.
He's lost his mind.
In the absence of that, a bit of have a go heroism is not the end of the world. If anything, it should be encouraged. And I think clearly whether this is a question of liability...
I want to run after them and smash them to the sodding floor. I'm sorry, I do.
I mean, it's interesting, actually, because there's already a lot of people who used to work, say, in the kind of nightclub bouncing trade who have made their move over to supermarkets and have talked about actually... in some cases, experiencing more kind of violence than they had done on the doors. But I think move them over en masse, give them carte blanche for 6 months, let them deal with a shoplifter in the same way they might deal with someone rowdy dancing on a table. This problem will clear up in about 6 months.
I really do think it would. I really do. I feel so sorry for this guy. I'm so pleased he's been offered a job. I really, really am. Let's also talk about Kanye West at the Wireless Festival. We talked about it earlier as well. Home Office considering a travel ban, apparently not allowing him into the country. There is a precedent for this from Theresa May back in 2015. Someone who would... Tyler, the creator, I'm not pretending I know who this is, basically because he'd had an album in 2009. So 6 years earlier, not something he'd done a year ago, encouraging violence and homophobic language. I mean, God, if we're going to ban all the rappers with homophobic language, I don't think anyone's going to be in the country at all. They get a free pass apparently, but there's calls from the boss of the festival that it should be, you know, we should be a bit more forgiving. He's apologised, Kanye West has, but bearing in mind that this is a man who sold Nazis, the swastika on a T-shirt as part of his own merchandise. He has had a song called Heil Hitler, celebrating Hitler. He's worn, as you say, a Ku Klux Klan outfit. He's said some horrible things about Jews. He says that he's, you know, I've changed. I was having a bipolar mental episode. It's not me. Well, it went on for a very long time, Kanye, and not much time has passed since. He said, look, he wants to meet with the leaders of the Jewish community in Britain. The Board of Deputies British Jews said, yeah, we'd love to meet you. We'll talk to you in person after you cancel your appearance at the Wireless Festival. Should it be cancelled?
Well, ultimately, that's up to the organisers themselves. I think this is genuinely a tricky area, though, because the first thing you have to start with is the insane double standards as we've already been talking about, and even the double standards in relation to Kanye West himself. There's a certain group of people who were more outraged when he came out in support of Donald Trump than when he came out in support of Adolf Hitler. And there is something there about the willingness to indulge anti-Semitism, even the most gutter, straightforward form of it, as we remember from
when they forget to say they're anti-Israel or anti-Zionist and they accidentally use the J word.
Exactly.
Go, oops.
I think it's fascinating. It's fascinating that he's continued to have pretty significant chart success even after this, even after his outbursts of recent years. All that being said, it is worth saying he's clearly not a well man. I mean, the things that he's been saying, not just about Jews, but in general, he's clearly in the grips of a kind of
mania.
Well,
maybe he should be touring then.
He's convinced that, you know, he blames him for everything, not just the usual anti-Semitic diatribes, but for his various mental health conditions and things. There's clearly something going on there. He has been on this quite recent apology tour, but it does raise the question, doesn't it, of where is the sort of line where you then, as a country, kind of ban a visiting performer from attending, and is it the same as, say, a kind of extremist, subversive politician?
Well, that's exactly. There are plenty of white supremacist politicians, from Europe who've been banned from coming to this country. But no, it's fine. I'm sorry, he gets a free pass because he's black. Let's be honest about this. If he was a white man saying this about black people, we've had the same thing over like P. Diddy at the court case against him. When they had the Me Too movement, a lot of black abusers got a free pass, and they got a free pass because on the left, if you're black and gay men as well, if you're black or gay, you're somehow down the bottom of the, you're vulnerable. You're one of the downtrodden, even if you're a multi-millionaire rapper, rather than what you're an oppressed, not an oppressor. He got a free pass for this stuff. If he'd misgendered a Jew, then they'd want him cancelled. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. We need to call it out what it is. I don't think the rules should be different. If they want to have rules, the same people who love the Wireless festivals, all music festivals are all lefty. If you don't want an actor to go on the stage because it's a woman who believes, funnily enough, that no women has a penis, then I'm sorry, you don't, you want your cancellation rules, you get your cancellation rules. And I'm pretty sure the Nazi swastika on a T-shirt and a swastika put over a Star of David, I'm pretty sure that should get you cancelled too. Or we don't cancel anybody, but let's have consistency.
No, I think that's totally fair, and I think the big double standard here is just where anti-Semitism is concerned at all. I mean, if someone said it's something even mildly questionable in relation to any other ethnic group or ethnic minority
or
trans minority,
or gay,
game over very quickly. I'm saying.
He wouldn't be like, so why the free pass? And also, it's a festival in North London, which is the largest Jewish population in this country. I think these things are relevant. But the boss of the festival, Melvin Ben, he says, look, I've been on a kibbutz for years. I'm pro-Israel. I'm pro-Palestine. Again, trouble is the Palestinian thing doesn't work. They don't want Israel to exist. So I love that people think that that's an option. Still, no longer an option. The Israelis are happy for it. The Palestinian leadership are not. But this is the thing. He says, look, this guy, we should show forgiveness. And I thought his statement was really good. And I think the trouble is, I don't think just taking a one-page ad out and making a statement is enough of showing to warrant the forgiveness. I think this is like the sort of, you know, the husband who's had an affair for the 15th time, but he said sorry again. Yeah, I think you're going to have 5 years of not having an affair before we're going to believe you again. You know what I mean? I think he needs to earn that forgiveness a bit more rather than paying for a national newspaper ad.
No, and it's something which has happened very recently. I mean, we're talking about months, really, in terms of the last time he made one of these extreme outbursts.
And it wasn't a one-off.
It was that whole Hitler song he made was last summer, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah,
so this is not in the distant past. That being said, I think what is clear, when it comes down to it, I think we need to set a pretty high threshold for when we're removing visas from artists and so on and so forth. Does it mean it in this case? I'm not sure that it does. And I also don't think that the measure of your commitment to tackling anti-Semitism should be whether or not you think people should be allowed to perform or speak. Or
no, exactly. And I think he's a fantastic artist, and I'm a great believer in separating the art from the artist. I refuse to. I'm not going to not read Roald Dahl stories to to my child because he had horrific views. I mean, sorry, I think that's people of their time. I think we just need to. And by the way, otherwise you would never ever read anybody or listen to any music by anybody born before about 1960 because their views on women. But again, no one cares about that because we're just women. I'm just saying, let's be realistic. Just one final thing I want to get to before we go to the calls. The Artemis 2 astronauts, they broke the Apollo 13 record. They flew further from Earth than anyone has ever done before. A milestone for humankind. 4 crew members, they were in tears. They celebrated the record. They're nearly 50,000 miles from home. They went to the far side of the moon. 40 minutes they were out of contact. They got to see the whole, for the first time, any astronaut, any human being, seeing the whole of the dark, well, not dark because it was light, the sun was shining on it. That's why it's called the far side of the moon now. Because obviously, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's dark. But I mean, this is an important moment. Are you with me or are you with JK? Because Jeremy Kyle, I've battled over this. He just thinks it's a massive waste of money, no point to it whatsoever. It's just utterly pointless. Whereas for me, this is like absolutely about space exploration, going to Mars one day, all of the amazing the things we're going to learn about Earth, our ability to travel to another planet. If we are hit by an asteroid, I think this is absolutely crucial to furthering, keeping mankind alive. I think that's a good thing. I'm old-fashioned like that. I don't care how much it costs. I think it's a necessity. Where are you on this?
No, I completely agree with you. I think when you start having a sort of penny-pinching argument about things like space exploration, you're kind of missing the point. Not even the sense of where we're going as a species and, colonising other planets and the future of humanity and so on and so forth, but even just that human spirit of exploration, of achievement, the old cliche about why did you climb the mountain, because it's there. I think all of this speaks to a part of humanity which is often forgotten, is really important, and is something which can not only lead to all kinds of scientific discoveries, which it absolutely does. Last time they went to the moon, all kinds of things.
When you're walking down the road on your phone and you're trying to find somewhere, you're using space technology.
And all things that we can learn also about our own planet, all sorts, and our place in the universe. All these things are absolutely crucial. And also just that spirit of saying, let's go out there, let's go further than we have done before, in and of itself, I think is a good thing and an inspiring thing.
So there, JK. I'm going to keep this beef going. 11:26 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Your thoughts also on the doctor strikes. How would you deal with that? We haven't even got to small matter of Iran. We've talked about that a lot in the last hour. We are going to be talking more about a lot of the topics. Want to hear your thoughts on all of them? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Barry's on the line in Norwich, wants to talk about those doctor strikes. Barry, if you were Health Secretary, how would you handle that strike?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd do, right? I'd ban them from striking. I'd treat them like police officers, prison officers in the army. They take a Hippocratic oath, yeah? Right? And they've had a pay rise that I could only
dream of. Yeah.
Dream of, yeah, right? In the public sector, yeah? And, you know, they haven't got the public behind them. And that BMA, they are just a troublemaking organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all they are.
Yeah.
And,
it's political. You know, it's a political axe to grind,
yeah,
isn't it?
I mean, it's been going on and on and on, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Over 3 years, 3 years?
3 years.
4 years?
Well, and we're told a £3 billion cost.
It's absolutely disgraceful, to be frank. And I think they want to. And one thing that baffles me, and I've seen them on TV. I don't live very far from my local hospital up here, right? And you go past them, and a lot of them look like they're in their late 20s, early 30s. Now, if they want to go back to their pay in 2008, I'm sure the majority of them are at school, aren't they?
Well, no, I was saying that point earlier. It's ridiculous. So they chose this high watermark of this wonderful, you know, golden age before the economic crash when they had that greatest pay. Well, great, but barely anyone is back at that level of pay yet.
No, and I don't know about you, but when you went for your job at Talk, when I went for my job, you know, I asked how much the pay rate is, so I was told how much the rate of pay is. Yeah. Right.
You knew the deal.
You know, you knew the deal, and these junior doctors or resident doctors or whatever they want to call themselves now, when they got the progression ladder and they get to the level of consultant, they're going to be on silly money.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, when they talk about their pay, they're talking about starting at 52 grand now. You know, thank you very much. I mean, I don't think inflation's been that high, but when I started on my local paper after uni, I was on 9 grand. You know, I mean, I was properly struggling. And so, I mean, they you know, and they don't allow for all the extras they get and their pension deals. So they're being a bit disingenuous, I have to say. Barry, couldn't agree with you more on that one. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Matthew, who is in Staffordshire. Matthew, you want to talk about that security guard sacked from Waitrose for basically tackling a shoplifter against store policy. Now being offered a job, though, by Richard Walker at Iceland.
Well, good luck to him, because he did his job, didn't he? I think the problem these days is that the security guards are given a uniform aware, but not given the lawful power to approach, challenge and detain. And you could give them that overnight by making them all special constables.
That's the point, isn't it? But they're basically, it's not even that they won't get backed up when they, you know, like, so if they're freelance, they're not going to get, you know, they're on a 0 hours contract, they don't get paid if they get injured and things like that. It's that they lose their job if they do the job you've kind of employed them to do.
Well, making special constables, they're actually doing the job they're employed to do with the lawful power to do it. And it sends out a clear message. If you come into this store, shoplift, you're approached and you're challenged and you fail to leave, then you'll be arrested. Yeah.
I mean, I've challenged some shoplifters and in my local store, and again, and talked to the security guards, and they're literally tearing their hair out because they are not allowed to challenge them. I mean, basically, one of them has to permanently guard the booze because the moment he moves away, and it's organised criminals, they're sitting there across the street watching. The moment he moves, that's it, they run in. I mean, this is not a way to live in a first world country. It's unacceptable.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and it puts the lives of security guards at the moment at risk who do dare to challenge, but also shoppers like you and me are caught up in it.
That's exactly, you know, and also why am I standing at the till paying if apparently it's a free for all as well? I feel the same way about people jumping the barriers at train stations as well. Matthew, thank you for that. 11:34 is the time. Right now, let's tell you that we are giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000 completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
So very good luck to you with that. Coming up, we are going to be talking to a former Health Secretary, Stephen Dorrell, about those doctor strikes, and we'll talk to the Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, that's Gideon Falter, about Kanye West. Should he or should he not be banned from coming to this country to appear at a music festival? That's all coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back. 11:37 is the time. Right now, let's talk more about the BMA doctor strike. It's been asking you to get in touch. We know, how would you deal with the doctor strike? 26% pay demand after getting 29% back in 2024. £3 billion cost to the NHS since 2023 of all these strikes. It's the 15th strike by doctors, resident doctors, used to be called junior doctors, with the BMA since 2023. Well, let's talk about all of that with Stephen Dorrell. He's a former Health Secretary and former chair of the NHS Confederation, was a Conservative, now a Lib Dem. I always want to put that in context when I talk to him about these issues. Stephen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us, because we know a lot of the things that the BMA spokespeople always say as well, you know, under 14 years of Tory austerity, ... and you were Conservative Health Secretary, you know, during some of that time. But, I mean, first of all, can you tell me, where does this £3 billion figure come from in terms of the cost? How does doctors going on strike cost the NHS what it works out as £50 million a day?
Well, I think it's a very good question. You were obviously, if you're running a hospital and some people are not turning up because they're on strike, there will be other costs you incur in order to keep the hospital open and running. But I think, frankly, it's a barefaced cheek of the BMA to imagine that because the NHS has had to spend whatever sum it is, let's say it's £3 billion, in order to seek to resist what I think is completely unacceptable pressure from the BMA, suddenly that turns into an entitlement on the part of the BMA to pocket that cash. I think it's
because they've said if you spend that money on our wages, then we wouldn't have the strike. And I mean that's quite bizarre. It's quite a bizarre claim. But a lot of their claims are quite bizarre, though, aren't they? I mean, again, just going through the whole sort of they want full pay restoration back to 2008, which was a high watermark before everyone in the public sector and frankly pretty much everyone in the private sector had massive pay real terms cuts because of the economic crash and there were pay freezes in the NHS and 1% rises well below inflation. That affected everybody. They seem to uniquely think that they should not be affected by it. They claim that the pay cut they've had in real terms, they use RPI instead of CPI, which makes it about 4 or 5 times more of a cut than it actually is. I mean, a lot of it, and bearing in mind, as a lot of people keep pointing out, they go back to 2008, most resident doctors weren't even doctors in 2008.
Well, that's true. I think that one of the points that's implicit in a lot of what you've just said is just to remember what happened in 2008. There was a financial crash. Now, I'm not suggesting that was all because of the BMA or because of the NHS. That clearly isn't true. But what is clearly true is that the public sector and the economic circumstances of 2008 were unsustainable. That's why there was a crash. So if everybody went back to the position in 2008, what we'd have is another crash. And I don't think that's a very desirable
That's a fair point. But it is interesting also, particularly, that, I mean, I want doctors to be well paid. I want them to be well rewarded. And people go, they're paid way more than... Well, of course they're paid way more than lots of other people. They've got much higher qualifications. It's a very difficult... I'm not just saying that because I'm a child of a doctor. But of course they're paid more than nurses. They went to university for a lot longer to study. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. Of course they're going to be paid more. However, it is interesting that the BMA, in their own building, which run where they're running the BMA, they've got staff, and those staff are with the GMB union, and they're currently on strike because the BMA won't pay them even an inflation-proof pay rise to cover for the losses they've had under inflation, the higher inflation, and at the same time are demanding way beyond inflation currently for their own. I mean,
to be more specific, Julia, the BMA are offering to their own staff less than the government is offering to the junior doctors.
Yes.
And their own staff are on strike. And the junior doctors think it's a let-out to say they're on the side of the staff. Well, they're members of the BMA that is arguing that less than inflation is all that can be afforded. Yes. For the BMA's own staff.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of making the government's argument for them. If you were West Streeting right now, you've been in that job, if you were Health Secretary right now, I mean, his view, I think, was always before the election, look, it's the Tories, they're not negotiating, and they've got that, this attitude with the, basically, two sort of fists pummeling each other with the BMA. We'll be able to come in as a Labour government, it'll all be fine. Hasn't worked out that way. Within minutes, within hours of doing a deal with the then junior doctors, the BMA said they were looking to start the next negotiations and would strike again. If you were Health Secretary now, what would you be doing?
Well, first of all, I say to West Streeting, welcome to the club. I think everybody who's been Health Secretary from an Aaron Bevan onwards, and including an Aaron Bevan, incidentally, has been blooded by the BMA and has learnt the hard way that although you may be, as Health Secretary, be sympathetic to doctors, you may want to help doctors, you may want to see improvements in the numbers of training places, for example. So there are lots of things the BMA argues for that pretty much any Health Secretary, certainly including me, is in favour of. But that doesn't help you. It avails you of naught when you're in a straight-up pay negotiation with a group of people who simply won't accept reason. So my advice to West Streeting, I'm afraid, is to pursue the same policy that every Health Secretary has had to pursue, which is to argue for what is rational, argue for what is affordable, argue for what is fair, but don't give in.
But he already gave in 24, and that's what probably undermined his position. But here's the thing. So lots of our callers are saying, you know, just like many other very key public sector workers, I would say the same with also people who work in public transport as well, even if they're on private contracts, that they should be banned from striking.
I don't agree with that, actually, because I think it's an argument. Where do you draw the line? And people who work in supermarkets are
no,
pretty
but we've got
essential.
choices. No, because we can go to another supermarket, but we can't go to another NHS.
Well, there are plenty. You know, that's true. But I think we should be very careful before we start saying that people can't strike.
Well, we don't let prison officers strike. We don't let police officers strike. We don't let soldiers strike.
Because and there's a dividing line, isn't there, between the security forces and other public servants. But there's a wide range of public servants who do essential work.
Okay.
And so I'm not in favour of extending the principle of no strike.
Okay.
I am absolutely in favour of resisting this completely unreasonable claim by the BMA.
Also, one other thing I want to ask you about, NHS staff were off work with mental health issues like anxiety and stress for a record 8 million days last year. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of NHS staff, but the number of sick days taken by NHS staff due to poor mental health, which they claim, has soared by 42% since 2020. Now, we've seen this across the board with people claiming mental health strain. Are doctors and other NHS staff, whether they're admins or whatever, are they under a unique amount of strain since 2020 that we're not aware of that would cause them this anxiety?
No, I don't think they're under. I think they were under very, very intense strain during the COVID.
Well, the ones who were working.
The ones.
I don't think GPs were under strain.
The great majority were under extreme strain then. And of course, to be working in an acute hospital is to be working in a stressed environment.
Yep.
That is unavoidably true. But I don't, and the figures you quote, I'd be interested to know whether the trend that affects the rest of the economy, which is increasing tendency for people to report mental health issues, whether that's either more or less impactful, having a greater or lesser impact on the health service. I'm not sure that it is.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you, Stephen Dorrough, former Health Secretary. Tom Slater, we talked earlier about the BMA strikes. It's interesting that he's not in favour of a former Conservative Health Secretary, not in favour of banning them from striking. But this number of staff taking 8 million days off for anxiety and stress. Again, I'm sure it's a very stressful situation you're working in, especially if you've got very upset patients and you can't feel you can give good. I think when you can't give good service, that's going to impact you more. But a 42% increase since 2020. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with swinging the lead.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Sorry.
Also, just the culture changing, not just in the health service, but in general in society. And I think it does point to the fact that in the context of these strikes, part of the problem is that sense of vocation, that sense of public service, which anyone who would be working in the National Health Service would previously have. Seems like it's around the edges going, that there's more of a kind of focus on the self, your own well-being and so on and so forth. Which
your
is
work-life balance.
Which is not unimportant, but you can push it too far in the other direction. And maybe that's part of the
Maybe
issue
that's
here.
not great for you, is what I would say at that point. But there we are, 11:47. It's time to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Gideon Falter at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism about Kanye West. Should he be banned from the Wireless Festival? Should he be banned from coming into the country at all? Or does he have freedom of speech, even if we don't like what he says? And if he has apologised for it? That's up next. This is Talk.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention back to Kanye West and whether or not he should be allowed to appear for 3 nights running at the Wireless Festival in July in North London. He has said, well, that he apologises for his past anti-Semitism, wearing a swastika on a shirt, wearing a Ku Klux Klan outfit, an album track called, I kid you not, Heil Hitler, extolling the brilliance of Hitler, for goodness sake. He's now apologised. Full page adverts in newspapers and the like. He's asked to meet with the leaders of the Jewish community in Britain, the Board of Deputies of British Jews, to talk to them ahead of the festival. Festival organiser Melvin Benn says he believes in forgiveness and he's not employing Kanye West to come and spout hate, but simply to sing songs which are readily available on the radio. They're played on the radio, they're available on Spotify, so why should it be banned from the festival? Well, let's talk about this with Gideon Falter. He's Chief Executive at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. Good morning to you, Gideon.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, should he be banned from entering the country and performing at this festival?
Well, he's saying that he's apologised, right? And I think for a lot of people, they'll look at that and they'll think, okay, well, he's apologised. Maybe there's something to it. There's really interesting timing to his apologies that comes on time and time again, which is that he does these horrendous things, and we are within a year of him, as you say, releasing an album called Heil Hitler, taking out a Super Bowl advert so that he could sell T-shirts with nothing on them but a swastika during the Super Bowl. You know, this is the kind of thing he's been doing. But each time he releases a new album or goes on a concert tour, he then apologizes.
Yeah,
and
how convenient.
It's very convenient. The timing is pretty punctual.
Well, he's blamed it on bipolar. He says, look, he's bipolar, it's mental illness. And that's what the festival organiser, Melvin Benn, said, look, I've known people with mental health problems. I've been supportive of Israel. But, we have to be forgiving.
I mean, Melvin Benn's statement's a really interesting one, isn't it? He says, I spent some of my gap year in Israel some decades ago, maybe half a century ago. Who knows how long ago it was. And he's decided that the Jewish community should just forgive Kanye and give him a second chance. It's not his second chance.
Yeah.
This is his third, fourth, fifth chance. Who knows? He's previously issued apologies, and then straight afterwards, once he's done the show in question, he then comes back and says, I take back my apology.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And also, there's an argument, if he really is apologetic and it really was something he didn't mean, went on for a heck of a long time. These aren't one-off statements said by someone under the influence of drugs or something, but also the time that has elapsed. So we're talking about last summer, so less than a year ago, but also, crucially, he's not done anything that we're aware of other than taking out a newspaper ad and issuing a public statement to atone perhaps for the awful thing that he acknowledges he did.
His track called Heil Hitler is still online right now. He's released a new track called Gas Chamber. These things, let's just think about what's involved in this. Putting out a track called Heil Hitler involves all sorts of people in production and distribution to get it out there. Taking out an ad on the Super Bowl requires that a vast amount of effort goes into securing the advertising slot, getting the video out there. Then someone's got to set up the online shop. Yeah. That's got to be tied up with a logistics operation.
A lot of people obviously thought this was okay.
Yeah. You know, look, if I personally believe he probably does have mental health problems. And I think we should be understanding of people who do, but lots of people have bipolar disorder who don't become, over the course of a decade or so, Hitler-loving, anti-Semitic lunatics who keep on using their immense platform to try to turn people into Jew-hating neo-Nazis.
Okay. Well, this is the thing.
If this were a hate preacher of another nature coming into our country, there would be no question whatsoever. If this was somebody who was a hate preacher, who was preaching hatred and death against people in another minority, there is no way that there would be even a moment's hesitation from the government. That person would not be coming in.
No, indeed. We know if it was against Muslims, if it was a white person preaching against black people, we know. Listen, look on the bright side, Gideon. He didn't misgender a Jew, so that's okay. I mean, you can smile, but that's the thing. I mean, the artists the people who are defending he's got the right to do this, a lot of those people have happily cheered on the cancellation of other artists who have simply stood up for Israel, interestingly, or refused to accept the idea that, women can have a penis. Okay to cancel those people, but not this guy. Here's the thing. 2015, Theresa May was Home Secretary. She banned an artist called Tyler, the Creator, from the UK, album lyrics from 6 years earlier, which encouraged violence and had homophobic language, and on the basis that it was not conducive to the public good. We understand the Home Secretary now, Shabana Mahmood, is looking at this. The Prime Minister has said he's found it concerning. People who have taken action, I would say all credit to them. Pepsi, Diageo, PayPal, a number of other alcohol sponsors of this festival have basically gone, yeah, we want nothing to do with it, thank you. A lot of these festivals only make money if they've got the big sponsors. They're just saying we don't want to be associated with this. Do you think at the end of the day it will be money that talks rather than the politicians making a go crazy actual decision?
I mean, clearly money is talking here. Melvin Benn, the promoter of the show, of the Wireless Festival, has spent a week avoiding the media as hard as he can. Now that all of his sponsors are dropping out, one after another, these big corporates are dropping out of backing the Wireless Festival. And all of a sudden, he's got a statement about how he did a gap year in Israel and the Jews ought to forgive Kanye yet again. So I think that this is pretty rich and this is all about money. I think that if West were really apologetic, if Kanye West really apologetic, then we would see him withdraw tracks like his Heil Hitler track. We see
that would be a bare minimum, wouldn't it? That would be a bare minimum to not continue to make money from that.
As a bare minimum, just stop doing the damage. He's still doing the damage right now. People are still able to go there and listen to this mad stuff that he's put out there. Maybe he would donate the proceeds of his swastika t-shirt to a charity somewhere.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that, which is Kanye West has more followers on social media than there are Jews on the planet. He has never once fulsomely gone out and explained why he's doing what he said, how he wants to try and repair some of the damage. And one of the apologies that we've had in previous years, just to give you how much of a joke it is, he literally tweeted, "I just saw Jonah Hill in 21 Jump Street, and now I like Jewish people again."
I mean, yeah.
That's supposed to be an apology for his neo-Nazi madness. But I think that what we need to see is the festival organisers grow a conscience. I don't count on that happening. And if that's not going to happen, Kanye West has now said that he wants to meet with the Jewish community. We're not meeting with him before he does the festival.
The Board of Deputies exactly has said when he cancels his appearance, then they'll meet with him. I think you've put a very strong argument there. I'd love to have people's thoughts on that. Gideon Falter from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Your thoughts on what you had to say, 0344 499 1000, be very good to hear. Going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, about Iran. This is
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. 2 minutes past midday is the time, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you missed anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in a couple of moments, we're going to be talking to the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, about Donald Trump's threat to wipe out Iran if it doesn't agree to a ceasefire by tonight. Also, we're going to be talking about Reform UK's threat to block all visas for countries that demand slavery reparations. I've got to be honest with you, loving the sound of that policy. The Tories demanded that a Waitrose employee who was sacked for tackling an Easter egg shoplifter, they demanded that he should be reinstated. He, though, has already been offered a job at Iceland for what he's done. Plus, we're going to be talking to our favourite space boffin, Andy Lound, about the Artemis 2 astronauts heading back to Earth after conducting the historic moon mission, travelling further from Earth than any human has ever travelled before. Right now, I'll just introduce you to Tom Slate. He's editor of Spiked Online, who's still joining us. Just before we go to Sir Richard Dearlove, I didn't get a chance for you to come back on what Gideon Falter was saying about Kanye West and whether or not he should be banned from the Wireless Festival. I'm sort of unusually in two camps on this one. I'm not sitting on the fence. I can move between. I think there's an argument for forgiveness and also an argument for people who need to prove that they deserve to be forgiven, and for saying and doing awful things as he's done, a clear blatant anti-Semitism by Kanye West in very recent months as well, and whether or not he's proved that he didn't really mean what he said. If he really didn't mean it and he's really, really sorry, I think there are better ways to show it than taking out a newspaper ad and doing some concerts. Gideon Falter making the point, look, there's no real evidence that he really means it, and we need to have a line that can't be crossed. But you and me, we believe in free speech.
Yes.
I think you've got a higher threshold for me on this in terms of should anything be? Is there anything he could say or do that you would see that there would have to be a ban?
And I think the main thing in all of this is consistency. You can't have double standards. You can't have...
We do have. We know we have double standards.
Exactly. And this is why even...
The left does, anyway.
Even historically, I've been pretty critical of moves to remove visas from far-right politicians or from Islamists coming to the UK, partly because I think it doesn't work. I think, especially in the age of the internet, you can ban a
they make that their
They'll
shtick.
be streamed into that mosque anyway.
Yeah.
You can ban a musical artist. You can still listen to his music on the internet. Even some of the tunes which have been removed from Spotify because they were so Hitlerian are still accessible if you want to find them. It is now if it wasn't already.
Okay.
So there's that question of does it work. There's also the question of does it ultimately kind of project a slightly kind of low view of the rest of the public? Do we think they're going to be kind of brainwashed by the presence of Kanye West rather than just allowing him to play? And I think particularly where anti-Semitism is concerned, and I think this is an important point, it thrives on conspiracism, the sense that the state is out to get them, the sense that they, and we all know who they mean by they, are trying to squash anyone who is telling the truth about the
they
Holocaust
control
or
the
Hitler
world.
or whatever. I would be reluctant to play into any of that. So I think where these things are concerned, it's not to say that anyone has an absolute right to come here regardless of what they do and what they say. It's not the same as being a citizen in this country where you do have certain rights just by dint of
so
being
you
a
can
citizen.
shout death to the IDF from a stage and not get
Very
arrested,
different.
apparently.
But that is
if Kanye West had said, I want people to kill Jews, that would cross the line.
All sort of direct incitement to violence.
Direct incitement to violence. Then he would be that would be clear cut. But he hasn't actually.
And if there was
he's putting Jews. I would say he's clearly putting Jews in this country at risk by supporting.
And we've got enough of that in this country.
If you're cheering on the man who killed 6 million Jews, I'm pretty sure you're putting Jews at risk.
Well, exactly. And the big part of the problem here is that we've got enough of that in this country already. I suppose.
Okay. Well,
but it's tricky, and I think also it's tricky when you're dealing with someone who's not a politician per se, but is a sort of artist performer.
But he
these
does
things
politics. Yeah.
Well, one aborted presidential.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Also, you can get in touch about anything we're talking about, including with my next guest, but also the strikes by the BMA resident doctors. We're told that the latest one is going to add to that £3 billion bill since 2023 for all those strikes. This is the 15th one. It started 5 hours ago. If you were Wes Streeting, you were the Health Secretary right now, how would you deal with the doctors' latest pay demand of 26%? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at a national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Right now, let's get to my next guest and talk about, well, the small matter of war in the Middle East. Sir Richard Dearlove is the former head of MI6. I'm delighted to say joins us. A very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia.
Appreciate you joining us. Just some interesting news development, and which we'll come to, which is Iran's Karg Island has been hit by several strikes. This is where 90% of Iran's oil comes out then via the Strait of Hormuz. It's been hit by several strikes, according to reports from Iranian media. Let's just talk generally, though. Donald Trump has spent the last few days basically on social media, in interviews, in press conferences, threatening to wipe out Iran. The deadline is tonight. If they basically don't agree to a ceasefire, he's used expletives, the F word, B word, calling these people crazy, and he's also threatened to basically start attacking what would be infrastructure that could also have a civilian use, not just missile silos, but bridges, energy infrastructure, and the like. He said he can basically bomb Iran back to the Stone Age in a matter of hours. What do you make of his threats, and indeed the threats by the Iranians to retaliate in the Gulf?
Well, I think Trump, we know now, is a master of uncertainty. He's never going to state exactly what he's going to do. And, he'll say one thing, contradict himself. And in a way that gives him some sort of military and strategic advantage, however distasteful we might find it. And obviously, it's very confusing listening to his messages, which turn out to be non-messages. I think that the situation hasn't greatly changed, and the basic line is that if the Iranians refuse to compromise, which seems to be the situation at the moment, I think Netanyahu, and you mustn't leave him out of the equation, Trump, are going for broke. And what I mean by that is it was always their intention to try to get rid of this regime. And forget about bombing Iran back to the Stone Age. That's just ridiculous rhetoric. What really he's talking about is imploding the regime and replacing it perhaps with something which is more malleable, more reasonable in terms of its relations or future relations with the West. However distasteful and however much we disapprove of this war, if the regime falls, ironically, Trump will have done the West.
Well, exactly. I don't personally disapprove or find the war distasteful. I don't think it's a war of choice. I think it's a war of necessity. Look, you're far more of an expert in terms of security, but I think as a general, don't think it's a good idea for Iran to have the weapons capability and the urge to get nuclear capability, given the threat that they pose because of the fundamentalist, fascist nature of their regime. Here's the thing, though. Isn't the worst case scenario for them to be, bombed, okay, one Ayatollah down, another one apparently in a coma, but if it's still the same regime of sorts still in power, basically going back to their attempt to build up their nuclear capability and now the missile capability, having proven that they basically have this switch they can flick in terms of closing the Strait of Hormuz at any time, which basically will put even the biggest military power in the world, the Americans, on the back foot, that actually, okay, it'll take them a while to build up that military capability again, but we've actually shown how strong Iran is.
Yeah, well, it's a massive country, with 90 million people. It's been pursuing this extraordinarily destructive and disruptive policy for years. And where we are now, is the final chapter in a crisis which started back in the 1970s. Yeah. And okay, I retired quite a long time ago, but what were we dealing with back at the beginning of this current century? We were dealing with Iranian nuclear ambitions. Yeah. And this is something that, as it were, is completely unacceptable, particularly with a regime like the current Iranian regime. So, I mean, I agree that until we solve that problem, it's going to just continue on and on and on as a crisis. And perhaps made worse by this conflict, because if they're left, if the IRGC, let's face it, we're talking really about this group, are left in power, they'll be determined, to get back to where they were. And they have a fantastic record of lying and deceiving the international community, whether there have been inspections and I've been a great critic of the attempts to, as it were, mollify the regime and negotiate with them, because you
can't trust a word they say. But they've also got support, this axis of evil, the Russians, the Chinese, helping. That is the big concern. It's interesting, I was just saying earlier that Iran's Karg Island, which lots of talk about the US Marines being flown into the region so they could basically take Karg Island, because once you've taken Iran's ability to sell oil, then that has a massive impact on the regime. But the Karg Island has been hit by several strikes. Now, the Israelis have said that they have been carrying out some targeted strikes. So it may well be that Israelis behind that. Interestingly, the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, they've said they are willing to widen the scope of their attacks beyond the Middle East, beyond the region, if the US carries out an assault on its civilian facilities. So we've already had talk and the big fear about attacking energy installations and energy production in, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East. We know Iran's got the ability to do that, but also their ability to take out desalination plants as well, another massive concern in those Arab states, but also attempting to do it in Israel as well. And of course, Israel's got the Iron Dome, but it's not, as we can see from the deaths we've seen, it's not foolproof. There is a real risk of this escalating across the Middle East, but also if Iran does have these weapons, and I think you and I have discussed it before, those weapons that were apparently sent towards the Chagos Islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean, could those reach Europe? We're in different territory altogether, aren't we?
We are, and that would be a huge escalation. Frankly, I don't expect that to happen.
Why not?
Well, because it would really line up everybody.
That would bring in the Europeans. They'd have no choice.
They would be forced to join the conflict if Iran sort of began to target European countries. And I mean, the ballistic missiles of that range, I think, are relatively speaking untested. They have the capability, and I'm not sure that they have a great number of them. I mean, I'm not sufficiently in the detail now to know. But on the other hand, I think one can speculate that they won't go down that track because it will be really a step too far.
Even for Islamic, revolutionary fanatics?
I think it's much more likely that you'll see perhaps some sort of inspired terrorist attack, because that would be more disruptive in a way than a single missile shot. So I think one is maybe in a heightened security situation. And through proxies and through influence Shia mosques and other extreme groups, they have the ability to mount some sort of, terrorist spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we know that the authorities, including the security services used to work for and lead, were having to constantly try and foil these attacks. Donald Trump, in one of his asides yesterday, said about Keir Starmer, who, after Keir Starmer said that if there were going to be attacks on bridges and civilian infrastructure or dual-use infrastructure, that he wouldn't allow the US to fly from British bases. But Trump responded by saying, we don't need another Neville Chamberlain. Do you think Keir Starmer is far more reminiscent of Neville Chamberlain than, say, Winston Churchill?
Well, I think that's a bit unfair. But on the other hand, I would say that the Prime Minister could have been a more enthusiastic supporter of the conflict right from the word go. And he can, as it were, lend support, significant strategic support to the United States without actually participating in the conflict. And I think, we made a big mistake from the start. And of course, the whole question of how you respond, what you say in this crisis is important. Yeah. And I think that I disagree with the way that I strongly disagree with the way that Starmer's handled it. But of course, he's pandering to the left wing of his party.
Yep.
who are firmly opposed and seem somehow to want to give some sort of understanding to this impossible regime.
Yeah, it is quite bizarre. I mean, I have to say, it's one thing them supporting Hamas, but supporting the Iranian regime that sponsors them and murders between 30 and 40,000 protesters on the streets in cold blood. But apparently they're the good guys.
Yeah, well, they've killed women who've refused to wear the hijab. The oppression is extreme and ghastly. Why on earth would people be supportive of this?
Because they're not Israel and they're not America.
Yeah, I know.
But that's how simplistic it is. Let me ask you though, in terms of the threats of bombing back to the Stone Age and bombing bridges, and 4 hours they can take back to Stone Age, bombing energy plants, including energy projection. Again, if we're looking at oil prices going up right now, whoa, the difference if we're talking about energy, Strait not being open for some months, possibly even years, but crucially also the oil production in many other Middle East countries being damaged. We are talking about a massive issue for many, many countries around the world. But John Spencer, as I'm sure you'll know, is an expert in America on sort of legality of war and the conduct of war. He's argued that against what a lot of us have been saying, a lot of people assuming that targeting bridges, power plants, oil and gas facilities, airfields and other dual-use infrastructures, targeting communication, factories and rail lines, if they serve both civilian and military needs, may in fact be lawful. A lot of talk about war crimes, but we've had a lot of talk about war crimes in Gaza, and most of this is entirely unfounded as well. Do you think that it would be a war crime in your view?
Personally, I don't think it would be, because these are the infrastructure that the regime uses to oppress the people and to give them, mobility and access speedily across the country, to put down demonstrations. Look, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an international lawyer, but there are very, very strong differences of opinion between what is a crime and what isn't. But I think once you're in a conflict, you're involved in a war, and war is violent. And where you draw lines seems to me to be incredibly arbitrary, and the domain of several international lawyers who have excessive influence in this area, which is, in my opinion, unjustified and rather, takes the debate away from the real issues.
Which is winning the war.
And do remember that the United States is not a member of the International Court of Justice anyway. So, no one's going to be able to prosecute them because they don't agree with the court.
No.
For reasons which I think are pretty obvious to those of us who endorsed that decision by successive US administrations, Democratic and Republican.
Very interesting. Thank you. Just finally, we were talking just before we invited you on air about Kanye West and whether the rapper should be allowed to come into the country to perform 3 nights in a row at a music festival, the Wireless Festival in London in July. Big rows over the fact he has said and some outrageous anti-Semitic things, has songs praising Hitler, worn swastika and sold swastika T-shirts and the like. You were the head of MI6. Theresa May, when she was Home Secretary in 2015, she banned an artist, Tyler, the Creator, for a behaviour not conducive to the public good, for homophobic lyrics, encouraging violence and the like. Do you think that Kanye West should be banned from entering the country for not being conducive to the public good? Do you think he poses a threat to this country?
In this instance, I think he should be banned. And because we have such a significant problem with anti-Semitism at the moment, and I'm against the sort of idea of banning artists, but I think the circumstances during wartime, and Israel's involved in war, and, given the background with Hamas and all the other issues that we're familiar with, I think in this case, you ban him. Certainly, you ban him.
You think he has actually a risk to the public safety?
Well, I think it's inflammatory for the Jewish community, and we need to extend our hand and understanding to the Jewish community and protect them from this sort of appalling prejudice. I'm sorry, but I think it's a pretty clear-cut issue.
Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, really appreciate you joining us. Covered a lot of ground there. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, just your reaction to what Richard Dearlove said about Kanye West there.
No, I think reasonable people can make different determinations where this is concerned. I think it's that really difficult line between where does kind of artistic freedom and the concerns for the broader public, and also the fact when people are coming from overseas, it's not as a clear-cut proposition as when someone from within the UK.
Because you do have a decision about whether you're allowed in the country or not.
No, of course.
I mean, America can not let us come in because they don't like something we've written on Twitter.
But I think my starting point is always if there are people who want to host him, if there are people who want to sponsor that event, although some have pulled out, and if there are people who want to go, that's their freedom of association, that's their choice. If people want to protest, if people want to turn out against him, that's also their choice, and that's how you kind of mitigate it.
I have to say that's the interesting thing is, again, I think at the end of the day, it's nearly always going to be, money that talks, like the whole of wokeism, on that issue, that actually that is that's what got, Nike, have you lost a load of money because you had a man pretending to be a woman in a laughable way with no breasts, obviously because he's a man, advertising sports bras. Funnily enough, women don't want to buy your items anymore. Weird that, isn't it? But there we are. Also, just obviously, let's talk about the small matter of what's going on in Iran. He says he doesn't believe that an attack on infrastructure would be a war crime. Again, backing what John Spencer, an expert on war conduct, has said. But there is also this issue, isn't there, with Donald Trump? Lots of threats, but then there's this phrase, taco. Trump always chickens out. By the way, so did Obama. Red line in the sand in Syria, anyone? But actually, if you make these threats, these stupid threats, you need to carry them through. But I don't want him to carry them through, because I would like, when or if this, at some point, this regime will fall, whether it's in weeks, months or years, I would like the Iranian people not to have their entire infrastructure destroyed.
No, exactly. And that's where these things are actually quite finely balanced. I mean, as you've already been talking about on the show so far, it's not about targeting, quote-unquote, civilian infrastructure per se. It's about whether or not it's seen as disproportionately affecting the civilians. I mean, even there was an article in Vox, a very left-wing anti-Trump outlet, which was making precisely these points the other day. But I think it was just the kind of broad sweeping nature of that announcement, which just opened him up to that accusation from his critics. Whether or not he would ever actually carry it out as a different issue.
He is his own worst enemy on that front, isn't he? I'm just not entirely sure that this defence of, he's keeping them on their toes, they don't know what he's going to do. I don't think that flies anymore. We discussed much earlier on the show, about 2 hours ago, whether or not people are genuinely concerned. Is there some sort of evidence of dementia? Because of the erratic language, some of these messages. Of course, we know he's got an attention span issue. Like, bored with this now. It's supposed to be, 4 to 6 weeks. Bored now. Next. That there is a worry about that actually these things need to be thought through. Again, you would have secured the Strait of Hormuz if you were all thinking it through, but surely the Pentagon thought it through. Who's not thinking it through? Is Hexas not thinking it through? His Secretary of War, and I don't care what he wants to call himself, but the whole point of having someone ex-military doing that job was they would understand this stuff. And I'm not ex-military, and I understand it better than they appear to have done it. Or is this also the Western media demanding that wars are just perfect and clean and wonderful, and you have a victory within days and everything's fine? Otherwise, it's a disaster. Because it seems to me that they are massively... Look, the Israelis know what they're doing. If anyone's under illusion, then we know that Netanyahu knows what he's doing when it comes to taking on an enemy. For goodness sake, Israel has never lost a war. There's a giveaway. Apart from PR war on social media over Gaza. But they, Netanyahu, they know they've got the intel they've got in Iran. They've been taking out the nuclear capability, the missile capability, their ability of the Iranians to wage war and to plot against Israel and their Gulf neighbours. They've got the support of pretty much every Arab state in the Gulf. That's quite a giveaway of what threat Iran poses, and it needs to be neutralised. And we can either do it today or we can do it next year or 20 years' time. But it's going to have to be neutralised.
I do wonder, though, that given Trump's reputation for piling in and then trying to get out quite quickly, whether or not these bellicose threats are being taken as seriously in Tehran as they might otherwise have been, because that's the whole theory, right? Is that you make them, you keep them guessing, you make them think that you might even hit that red button at some point if you've pushed to it. I'm just not entirely clear. They're certainly not acting in such a way that they think he's likely to carry through.
But if these people genuinely think they're believing in this apocalyptic war to bring back their Messiah, I don't know the terminology, and they're going to go to see their 72 virgins. What do they care? That's the worry.
Yeah.
12:26 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Get your calls in. Coming up, we're going to be talking about reform, saying they're going to block visas for anybody coming from a country that is demanding slavery reparations. Good luck to the Caribbean there, although might hurt some holiday destinations for Brits. We're also going to be talking to our favourite space boffin expert, Andy Lamb, about that Artemis 2 moon mission. What have we learned so far? What they've done so far? How significant is it? That's coming up. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thanks so much for joining me. 12:29 is the time. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about a visa ban on people coming from countries where they've been demanding reparations for slavery. I'm loving this policy. And more on that moon mission from Artemis 2. First up, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Robert is in Hertfordshire, wants to talk about those BMA resident doctors' strikes. I've been asking, if you were Health Secretary right now, what would you do to deal with their 26% pay demand? What do you think you'd do, Robert?
Tell you what I'll do. I've changed my name, by the way. I'm Mr. Angry. I'm Mr. Livid of Hertfordshire. I'll tell you what I'll do. I never thought I'd say this. Sack them all. It's about time we nationalised the NHS, and that will give them a boot up the...
Wait a minute, nationalised? It's already nationalised.
Well, it is to a certain extent, but I mean to the point of you ain't got a job anymore. You know,
okay. All very well. You get rid of half of work done by doctors, I think, in the NHS is carried out by these people. Ooh, so we just sack them all, and then what? We just people just die?
There's a deeper thing to this. This is the same as a university is in a school. It's been infiltrated by Marxism. And
I completely agree with you, yeah.
Now, I'll tell you now, I see a photograph of these striking doctors today. I guarantee you, although I can't prove it, once they take their doctors' whites off, on go the Antifa masks, and they're walking up and down Oxford Street, It's the same, you know, it's Marxism. It's destroying this country. It's destroying the educational system. West Streeting had a great opportunity when Labour took over. He could have done a deal with them and said, yeah, I'll give you what you want, but you never strike again. Sign of thing. Yep. He had the opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. By the way, I was tweeting last night about a guy called Ranjit Brar, and he's a vascular surgeon, a consultant at King's College Hospital in London, and he was shouting, basically cheering for Iran, calling for victory to Iran in this current war, and talking about wiping Israel off the map and cursing the parasites of the City of London and the Epstein class. I mean, again, is he talking about bankers, or some of the language is, frankly, language that has been used by many people about Jews as well? I mean, but basically it was all about, you know, exploitation of the masses and Marxists. But he's a consultant on a very high salary talking about exploitation. I mean, frankly, do one, mate.
What's his name?
His name is Ranjit Brar.
It sounds like dirty underwear, don't it?
Oh, for goodness sake. What are you like? No, but I'm just saying, but we've seen again and again numerous doctors in the NHS who are spouting extraordinary things. They seem to be highly politicised in a way that they certainly weren't, you know, I think 20 years ago. Robert, thank you for your call. Mr. Angry there. I'm not entirely sure, Tom Slater, that sacking a lot of them is going to do it, but there's no question at all the NHS, and certainly NHS unions now, but I don't think the Royal College of Nursing, but certainly the BMA, and we know the National Education Union in schools, highly political. They're basically communists. It's full-on lefty Corbynista type politics, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting where the BMA are concerned because of the fact that historically it wasn't always the case. It's often quite a kind of small C conservative institution. Yeah. But, you know, as is gone the way with many unions, they've kind of taken a slightly Corbynista bent over the course of the past decade. And it's just getting to the point where I think people's patience is running thin, certainly amongst patients, but it's one of those things where if you're going to do industrial action, it doesn't matter how fair your claims are, how fair your grievances are, that there needs to be some form of redress. Particularly if in the public sector, you need to take the public with you.
Yeah, and they're not.
And that's not happening.
No, indeed. Well, let's see. Is Kanye West taking the public with him in terms of wanting to come and perform at the Wireless Festival in North London in July? Let's ask Marion, who's in Norfolk and is joining us. Marion, what do you think? Do you think Kanye West should be banned from coming to the country? Do you think he should be banned from the festival?
Ooh, I hate being put on the spot. I think he should be banned. I did some research while it was being discussed, and what I found out was Mein Kampf, I've never read it. Hitler said they were racially inferior, subhuman people of colour, and they were targeted by discrimination laws.
Black people.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's Kanye celebrating Hitler in a song. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Hitler didn't think so much of him.
He murdered 6 million Jews and 10 million other people, some of which were people of colour. So I'm just at a loss to why he would actually glorify in his music Hitler.
Well, he says he's suffering from bipolar, it's mental disorder, and that's why he's apologised. Do you think that the Jewish people here, or indeed people who support, you know, Jewish people, should say, yeah, we accept your apology, it's fine? Or do you think the government should say, you're not welcome here, you're not, what's the phrase, conducive to the public order?
It's like telling a bad joke that really hurts someone, you know, and then when they get a reaction they didn't expect, oh, I was only joking. No, I think he's a grown-up. He's responsible for what he says and what he does.
Yeah. I defend people telling jokes that upset people.
You do?
Yes, 100%. I think you should joke. I think you can joke about anything. I think you can joke about racism, sexism, child abuse, rape, the Holocaust. I think you can joke about if it's a good joke.
Yeah, but because he's so famous, I mean, aren't you sort of obligated to be careful in a certain way? Yes, have fun, you know, and do what you want to do.
Well, a joke by definition,
people look up to you.
Yeah, exactly. There's a joke is not saying you mean it. You're making a joke. That's different. Whereas he's made money out selling T-shirts with swastikas on.
What can you say?
I know.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's the thing. Marion, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Again, I think it's a difficult one. I don't think it's clear cut. I really don't. 12:36 this time. We're going to take a quick break. First, though, we're giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000. That's completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. Here's how you could be in with the chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Right, lots more coming up. Stay tuned. This is Talk. It's 12:36.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Let's talk right now about, well, a fascinating new policy announced by Reform UK. So they're going to stop issuing visas to countries that demand slavery reparations from Britain. 17 nations, largely Caribbean or African nations, have demanded billions of pounds. I mean, it would actually be, trillions and trillions and trillions in total to compensate for Britain's historical role in the transatlantic slave trade. And yet, after the past 2 decades, Britain has issued a total of 3.8 million visas to nationals of these countries. Oh, also, by the way, our taxes are paid for £6.6 billion in foreign aid to those countries. So Zia Youssef, the Home Affairs spokesman, has said the UK has made huge sacrifices to end the slave trade. Yeah, small point, worth making, and described calls for British taxpayers to pay compensation as insulting. I'm loving this policy. I imagine my next guest will as well. Robert Bates is Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. And we've had a lot of, we had Kemi Badenoch from the Conservatives saying, we shouldn't be paying any reparations, and we've had the Labour government sort of, well, we're not entering any discussions on this, but basically hand wringing. I like it really clear. No, load of nonsense. We're not paying reparations, and you know what? It's cheeky of you to ask, and we're going to punish you for even asking. I love this. What do you make of it?
I think it's spot on, and this is one of the glories of having a sovereign border policy. And if we do see in 2029 a centre-right government, this is the kind of thing they can be doing. And I think of the list of countries, of course, the big one there is Nigeria, where we hand out hundreds of thousands of visas in the last few years alone. They're one of the biggest countries that do receive long-term visas, but also visitor visas. And I think one of the most interesting parts of these proposals is that it's not just going to be to those wanting to come and work and study in the UK, but also those hoping to maybe come and visit and be a tourist in this country. And actually, I think we misinterpret what a tourist visa really is these days. I think they're going to go and look at Big Ben and spend lots and lots of money, but in reality, actually, it's coming to meet up with family members and really not offer any actual economic boon. So I think this is...
And also they last for three months. So whereas we get a visa for 3 months, but we only go for 2 weeks somewhere, talk about people coming for 3 months, and as you say, they're not necessarily spending money on hotels and restaurants and booking a load of West End shows and you know, travelling around the country. We're not getting that economic benefit you might be getting from, say, American tourists.
No, exactly. They're often sat in a council house in Newham and not really actually doing much to rejuvenate or to energise hospitality and so forth. And I think actually the idea of a red list is really something that's garnered a lot more support in recent months. And I think it's something that actually is essential, not just when you see these countries sort of taking the mickey and asking for reparations, but when you consider that certain nationalities, whether it's their economic contribution or their crime rates as well, really simply aren't worth actually entertaining with visa systems, with open door immigration policies. And this idea of just saying, no, sorry, for the time being, we're going to introduce a moratorium is definitely the way forward.
But this is the thing: it will punish individual people who might want to come here to work, and we would welcome. It will punish family members, and I've got friends who are Nigerian, and that would absolutely be a concern for them. However, there is also an element where, well, you know, these are democratic nations. You know, talk to your government and stop asking for nonsense stuff, pretending that we're responsible for the world ills when we're the only... Every empire has had slaves. We're the only empire that stopped slavery. And by the way, it was West African kings and leaders and people who were rounding up their fellow black people and putting them in the slave markets and selling them to the Europeans who were selling them. White people have been enslaved. Europeans have been enslaved. This is completely the norm. We are the only nation in the world to have actually ended slavery and campaigned around the world. And by the way, it was ordinary Brits who campaigned for that, working class, ordinary Brits who campaigned for it. And I've got to be honest with you, I've got zero time for anyone making these demands. And we know it's a load of corrupt, kleptocratic leaders in the Caribbean just hoping to get a slice of the money. It's not going to go to make people in the, you know, ordinary people living in huts in the Caribbean's lives better. But there needs to be a cost for them making these demands, doesn't there?
Absolutely, because otherwise they will keep interminably rolling on. And actually, we've seen, you know, the UN recently suggests that passing a motion, the transatlantic slave trade was the worst atrocity in human history, and we should continue to self-flagellate ourselves for it. And I think actually it completely misdirects where the conversation needs to be about what those countries should actually be doing to improve their own lot. And I think we talk a lot about Britain's soft power. Well, actually, let's start using that soft power to the betterment of our country's standing. And this idea, if we can use visas to clamp down some of these attacks on us effectively, which is what they are, and say to them, unless you zip up and stop making these ridiculous claims, we're going to just simply withhold visas to you. That is exactly what a sovereign country should be doing. It should be using its own cultural, economic, whatever might it has to improve its own standing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. We should also be using some of our our powers to actually protect our own borders closer to home, shouldn't we? In terms of where we are with the Channel boats, I imagine we're going to get a whole load of numbers about the number of people who've come over the Easter weekend because the weather's been so calm and nice. Although I think maybe quite windy might have affected. But we all know it's the weather that affects the number of people who turn up in this country, not any government policy. But we're now told that the latest cunning plan to help tackle the Channel dinghies is facial recognition drones to be deployed in the Channel to catch migrant smugglers who are driving the small boats, although they only drive them for a short bit and then they go right over to you and then they head back to shore, don't they? Radar-enabled technology being trialled by Border Force to spot targets, even if they've altered their outfit or appearance. I mean, what's the point?
Well, quite. This is piddling around the edges. And we know that under Labour that the things have really descended into chaos. They nearly had the deal with France completely fall through. They have had their border commander recently quit because he effectively admitted that things weren't going very well and Labour had no real plan to actually stop the small boats crisis. We're still very early on in the year, and I think any attempt which Labour seem to be making with this press announcement today that they're sort of really clamping down and the numbers are falling are quite disingenuous, because the numbers that normally cross in the first 3 or 4 months of the year are very small compared to the huge wave that will come in late spring and into summer and into autumn as well. So actually, what we really are waiting for now is this huge surge that we all know is coming. I think there are boats coming across today. It's been reported in places that there are individuals making the crossing, and I think we will see very, very in the next few weeks, very shortly, that actually the crisis, far from abating, is continuing to increase at pace. These kind of measures, I think we'll see a couple of prosecutions at best of individuals that are driving these boats, but also a lot of claims from those that are.
And they'll be replaced by someone else. So what's the point? This must say, actually, as of 12:30, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has been holding a press conference along with Siobhan White. Now, she's the mother of Rhiannon White. She was a woman who actually worked at an asylum hotel where she was stabbed 23 times by an asylum seeker. That's Deng Majek. Now, he was jailed for life for that horrific murder back in 2024. But Nigel Farage has been holding a press conference with her mother, speaking about the impact of the illegal migration invasion on the safety of women and girls. Now, this is a huge issue. We know, of course, everyone's going to be focusing on those local elections, all the different political parties are. But this is a huge and growing issue. We've just seen the number of cases that have been coming to light where you're looking at sexual assaults, rapes, murders, other violent crime, forget the shoplifting and the working illegally, for Deliveroo, but serious crimes, particularly against women and girls. And no one can ignore it anymore.
No, and I think unfortunately now it seems to be impacting every single corner of the United Kingdom that we have these kind of reports. We, of course, saw in the last couple of weeks as well an individual sentenced for rape in Nuneaton of a 12-year-old girl, an individual from Afghanistan. We know full well now that individuals coming across on these small boats are from nationalities that are disproportionately represented in especially sexual assault crime statistics. It's unfortunate that the Home Office and actual government bodies aren't prepared to countenance this problem, and they really are continuing this push to dismiss concerns of local communities. When you look, for instance, as the righteous protests in Epping about the sexual assault that was committed there as well, and these are all kind of dismissed as communities that have been misled by scapegoating and fear-mongering, rather than actually look at the real concern, in which we're letting in young, unvetted men from countries that have very, very culturally distant and different attitudes towards women and girls into our streets, unvetted, unencumbered, free to roam around. It's an incredibly terrifying prospect.
And the misleading was done by the authorities refusing to divulge the immigration status and nationality status of a lot of these men. Again, now convicted, many of them. Robert Bates, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. We're going to take a quick break right now. Then we're going to be talking to my favourite space boffin and yours, Andy Lound, about that Artemis 2 mission coming back now from the moon. This is Talk.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. This is Talk. The time is 12:51. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Stater still with me. Delighted to be joined now by your and my favourite space boffin, space expert, Andy Lown joins us to talk about the latest on the Artemis 2 moon mission. A very, very good afternoon to you, Andy.
Good afternoon, Julia.
It was great to talk to you in the studio on the day that we actually had, you know, the lift-off and the successful lift-off and it went off to space. Now, this is now an Earth mission because they've gone around the far side of the moon. The first time that any human being has gone as far as they've gone. They're on their way back to Earth. I'm still arguing with Jeremy Kyle about whether or not this is worthwhile or not. But, I mean, certainly the Artemis 2 astronauts were in tears, weren't they, as they broke the Apollo 13 record. Tell us about that.
Yes, I mean, we enjoyed the launch, but to be honest, last night was one of the most exciting events I think I've ever experienced in my life. The spacecraft itself is doing a free return around the moon back towards the Earth, so they didn't need to fire their thrusters when they're going round. And of course, they stretch further away than Apollo 13 did. I mean, Apollo 13 did its free return because of an emergency. It was a safe way of getting them back.
Yeah.
So they actually have been the humans which have been furthest from the Earth ever in history, which in itself is quite amazing.
252,752 miles.
Yeah, quite a staggering distance.
And for 40 minutes out of contact with Houston.
Yes, well, they passed behind the Earth and they're out of contact altogether, which is quite staggering, really. They're the loneliest people in the solar system at that point, out of contact with the Earth. It's quite fantastic.
I don't know. Sometimes on Vodafone I feel that way too, but, you know, it depends where you are in our capital city.
Or ringing directory inquiries. Yeah, that's always the one, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, but the interesting thing was that, I mean, we emphasised this on Talk, that these would be the first humans ever to see the far side of the moon in detail in sunlight. And that was the descriptions they were giving, descriptions we'd never had before from human eyes, which was really important to try and get an understanding of that. And then when it went into darkness, they actually observed impacts on the surface of the moon from meteorites which were hitting the ground. And then when they came round, the work was to continue because they then had an eclipse of the sun by the moon to observe. And they said some of the things they observed there was magnificent. I think that some of the best lines I've ever heard from anyone, one of the astronauts stated they would have to invent new adjectives in the English language to describe what he can see. I mean, I find that absolutely an amazing thing for the human race, to actually be able to see things in the universe that they've never seen before and to try and get that through to us. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And it is a great, the way the world is at the moment and the way things are going, it's actually a big uplift for us to show how brilliant the human race can be if it chooses to put its mind to it.
Sets its mind to it. Well, there is that race, of course, with the Chinese over this as well.
Yeah.
For those who were foolishly not listening last week when you were in the studio talking about how important this isn't about, you know, just sort of, oh, my rocket's bigger than yours, or that. How significant this can be, because this is not about flying around the moon and back. There's a whole load of Artemis missions. This is Artemis 2. Artemis 4 is going to land on the moon, but the long-term aim is going to Mars. Tell us why all of that matters.
It matters. There's a number of factors which go into this. One is the general scientific information that we get back. That's always interesting from curiosity, but there's the technological developments which are really vital to us down here on Earth, and we need to develop our technologies. We're also running out of resources, or of what we might call available resources on the Earth. There is resources on the Earth, but they're hard to get hold of, going deeper under the sea, and there's always the issues that we are damaging our planet environmentally by some of the work we do, which in fact we are polluting areas, which can be a problem. But these resources are available on the moon, and they're available on the asteroids, and we need to develop technology technologies that can do that. And of course, other countries are doing it. You're absolutely right. There is a race with China. China is going for those resources on the moon, and they are going to put humans on the moon by 2030 themselves. Section off a part of the moon that they land on. There's no question that'll be Chinese territory. So what we're doing is we're seeing an expansion almost of the geopolitical situation on Earth out into space, and that's just life. That's what's
going to happen. I mean, again, I thought that was a deal that no one was going to be able to claim land territory on the moon. But how do you stop it? But this is the thing. This will be how wars are fought in the future. This is technological as well. In just terms of the far side of the moon, I mean, again, it is extraordinary. There is a part of the moon, because of the way the moon turns, the way we turn, that we never see. What did they see? Was there anything they saw that's different? I understand the two sides of the moon are very different.
Yes, on the side that we look at, we see the Maria, which is known as the seas. They're not seas, they're areas where volcanic lava has flowed across it. You don't see that on the far side of the moon. It's much more battered and hummocky, and nobody knows really why the difference is there. It might be because the side facing the Earth has more tidal forces placed upon it by the Earth, pulling it, but we don't know for certain. And the crust on the far side is also thicker. And one of the reasons we're going to have to study this carefully, and the Chinese already have a spacecraft on the far side, an unmanned one, is that we think the moon could have been part of the Earth at one time, and we'll be able to actually study that. And if that's true, we might actually get an understanding how the solar system itself formed.
Yeah, because they think that a massive asteroid hit the Earth and a bit bashed off, and that then became. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. Again, learning about the past helps us for the future as well. And again, you and I were saying, if we had an option, we'd both go to space. You'd happily go off to Mars, wouldn't you? I don't think I'd go that far, but we're just now waiting a few more days. They're on their way home. Everything going well so far. Apart from the toilet, they've still got problems with the toilet.
I know, isn't that all right? It's that interesting. They've had some issues with the toilet, and even during the mission, they had a warning sign came up. It's time to empty the toilet, the urine tank, which I thought was really funny.
And they can't because it's frozen.
Welcome to the real world.
I love the bit. It's always going to be something little like that because there's a problem. But it's fantastic to talk to you as always, Andy Lamb. Thank you very much. Tom Slater, you and I were saying how fascinating we are. We love it. But it is also interesting. It's like why is the other side of the moon completely different from? But I suppose if you looked at Earth, you only saw the Pacific Ocean, and then you saw the other side with all the landmass. You go, those are two completely different sides of Earth.
No, and that's why you've gone on these missions, to actually find out, to expand human endeavour and knowledge. So I think it's something that's really exciting, even though, especially at a time like this where things do feel a little bit.
Tell you what's really exciting is whether Kanye West is going to be able to perform this festival or not. Keir Starmer has apparently, Downing Street has said that all options remain on the table, decisions taken in line with the law about Kanye West. But the Home Office is reviewing Kanye West's permission to enter the UK to perform at the Wireless Festival. Interestingly, though, he has already been issued with an electronic travel authorisation, a visa waiver, and that allows visits for the next 6 months.